Very good morning, one and all dear participants. You all know that today is the last day for the CRE program, and the first topic is on understanding verbal behavior and developing functional communication. On this topic, Priyanka Sethi Madam will be sharing her in-depth knowledge. Priyanka Sethi Ma'am is a RCA registered special educator and a ABA practitioner who has completed her ABA course sequence from University of North Texas and is working with children with various disabilities across various age groups. As a professional, she is responsible for the development and implementation of all educational, language, and behavioral programming for children, as well as training and professional development of the staff, parents, and kids wherever she worked with. She is the owner of a clinic set up RM in Gurgaon and is a consultant with an autism organization. In her career span of over 14 years, she has learned, developed, and implemented programs for 1:1 setup, inclusive and integrated setups, mainstream classroom, resource room, social skill programs for individuals and groups, vocational setups across age groups, developing social emotional regulations, adolescence issues, developing sexual awareness, awareness of their rights, and many more. The field is continuously evolving, and she strongly believes in the process of continuous learning and developing her skill. Studying, conducting researches, and contributing to the field by training and empowering parents and educators is one of her strongly driven passion. I welcome you, ma'am, and the platform is all yours.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such a warm welcome. A very good morning and namaste to all of you. I'm Priyanka, and I hope that I know you all are exhausted और बहुत थके हुए हैं 3 दिन की ट्रेनिंग से मॉड्यूल से. I hope I'll try to make it as interesting as possible for all of you today. So to begin with the presentation, give me 1 second. I'll just share my screen with all of you. All right, so you have so far understood what is ABA as a science in these 3 days. You know what ABA is. You have understood what is the early intervention, what is the importance of early intervention, right? आप लोगों ने ये भी समझ लिया कि behaviors कैसे होते हैं, what is the function of the behaviors, हम कैसे समझते हैं कि कैसे function है, कैसे replace करना है, antecedent strategies कैसे use करते हैं, and all that. And today, our focus completely would be understanding language and understanding कि क्या हम ABA behavior techniques use करके हम लोग language develop कर सकते हैं, क्या हम लोग language is also one area जहाँ पे हम behavior interventions apply कर सकते हैं या नहीं. Can one of you unmute and let me know कि आपको मेरी screen दिख रही है?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So my entire topic will be talking about detail about language development and how behavior analysis helps you develop language, especially in children with autism या intellectual disabled जिनके पास social communication skills are weak. And I hope by the end of the presentation आप ये techniques not only with the kids in disability but कोई भी बच्चा जिसको language या communication development में problem आ रही है, you can apply these strategies and techniques with those kids also, and it completely helps you develop their language development, help them improve and develop the language development further. The entire presentation 2 parts में divided है, verbal behavior and developing functional communication training. So what I'll do is verbal behavior जैसे ही खत्म होगा, I will open the forum for you guys to shoot questions. आप please questions पूछिएगा. उसके बाद I will start functional communication training because मैं बीच में messages वगैरह नहीं देख पाऊंगी. So मैं verbal behavior complete करते ही I'll give you a pause. So please write down your questions and maybe to time होगा I'll answer all the questions. So let's begin. Okay, verbal behavior. So you know him, आप सब इनको जानते होंगे, Skinner. So basically till the time 1950s में what was happening was everybody thought that language development is innate, which means कि हम उनको था कि inborn होता है, we are born with the language development and it is already there, the language, the communication skills, we are born with, it's innate. But in 1957 जब Skinner की book बाहर आई, he actually offered and detail में explained what is the behavioral interpretation of language, which means he argued कि जो language है that is also a learned behavior, मतलब language भी सीखी जाती है and it is under control of environmental variables, which अगर आप लोग भी natural setting में देखें, we all are humans, right? But हम सबकी language development कहीं ना कहीं modified या governed होती है हमारे environment से, right? In India only देखा जाए तो जैसे जैसे बॉर्डर्स क्रॉस होते हैं तो लैंग्वेज मॉडिफिकेशन होती जाती है, राइट? कोई किसी लैंग्वेज में बोलता है, कोई डिफरेंट लैंग्वेज में बोलता है, किसी के घर में एक अलग सेट ऑफ सोशल कम्युनिकेशन होती है किसी के घर में. सो दैट इज व्हाट ही आर्ग्यूड इन डिटेल एंड स्पोक अबाउट कि जो लैंग्वेज डेवलपमेंट है वो भी एक लर्नड बिहेवियर है एंड इट इज टोटली गवर्न बाय एनवायरनमेंट. अब व्हेन दिस कम्स आउट दैट मीन्स कि लैंग्वेज इज आल्सो समथिंग दैट वी कैन कंट्रोल एंड वी कैन टीच, right? So that is what he argued about. And if that is true, how do we do it? And that's what you're going to learn completely today is how do we develop a language which involves communication, production of sounds, production of words, elongated speech, language with a child, even though he's not maybe born with it initially, but you can further develop it further. So, and how do we do that? Just like we do the other behaviors. And मेरी presentation में भी बहुत चीजें repeat होंगी जो आपने पिछले 2 दिन में सीखी है. So it will be actually good for me because it will be kind of a revision for you. So जैसे हम दूसरे behaviors करते हैं, which is the 3-term contingencies जो आपने सीखी होगी, is like antecedent, behavior and consequence, ABC model, right? So language में भी that is what we apply, the ABC model, right? इसमें जो B है behavior, जो हम focus कर रहे हैं, that is the language development in itself, the response to language, right? इस contingency में जो A होगा वो होगा motivation या instruction. Why motivation? Because completely it is driven by the function of the response. For example, मैंने आके आप लोगों से पूछा Hi, how are you? ठीक है, और आप में से कोई मुझे reply back करता है Priyanka, we are good. So that's a response to my instruction. SD means instruction. मैंने instruction पूछा Hi, how are you? आपने उसका response दिया I am good. मैंने I said oh thank you so much for telling me this. So this means in a way I reinforced your behavior, right? मैंने acknowledge किया, which is a kind of a social reinforcer. मैंने acknowledge किया, I reinforced your behavior, right? MO means motivation. That means you are attending this conference. आप लोग conference attend करेंगे. Maybe there is some component. If you're really liking the training, कुछ questions आप और पूछना चाहेंगे, right? That's your motivation to learn more. So that's a communication that you will develop. आप मुझसे questions पूछेंगे जिसका मैं response दूंगी. That is what clearly defines an MO, right? Where you have a motivation to ask me. So इसमें antecedents are motivation and instructions, behavior is a response, and the consequences either we reinforce it, either we put it on extinction, we ignore it, or either we punish. Based on what our consequences would be, it will really govern कि वो response दोबारा होगा या नहीं होगा. Let's understand this further as we move along, right? Now, in terms of the behavioral account of language, Skinner very well argued कि जब हम language की बात करते हैं तो हम उसको उसकी form में नहीं define करते, हम उसकी functions में देखते हैं, ठीक है? That is the very reason कि जब हम बच्चों के लिए language communication goals उठाते हैं या हम कहते हैं हम language develop कर रहे हैं, हम फॉर्म वाइज नहीं देखते, हम इंग्लिश के फॉर्म से नहीं करते कि बच्चे को पहले ABCD आनी चाहिए या हम बच्चे को पहले 1 2 3 4 सिखाएंगे या हम बच्चे को पहले पिक्चर दिखाएंगे बॉल, वो नहीं करते हम लोग सबसे पहले लैंग्वेज डेवलप करते हैं ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ उसका उनकी लाइफ में क्या फंक्शन होगा. सो वेरी क्लियरली जैसे कि मेरे पास कोई बच्चा आया है और मैं उसके साथ वर्क कर रही हूँ, वो 4 साल का बच्चा है और 4 साल के बच्चों का वोकल रेपर्टोयर अच्छा होता है, वो बहुत कुछ बात कर सकते हैं, क्वेश्चंस पूछ सकते हैं. बट मेरे पास बच्चा है जो अभी नहीं बात कर रहा है, बोल रहा है, तो मेरा फर्स्ट गो टू ABCD सिखाना नहीं होगा बिकॉज आई एम फोकस्ड मोर ऑन फंक्शन. मेरा सबसे पहले गोल होगा बच्चे को उसकी नीड्स बेस्ड कम्युनिकेशन सिखाना, फंक्शनल बेस्ड पानी मांगना, राइट, विच इज गोइंग टू हैव मोर फंक्शन. उसको कुछ खाना पसंद है तो वो मांगना, बच्चे को अगर खेलना पसंद है तो वो मांगना. सो दैट इज व्हाट इट डिफाइन. सो इन बिहेवियर एनालिसिस जब हम देख रहे होते हैं लैंग्वेज डेवलपमेंट को, द फर्स्ट कोर दैट वी फोकस ऑन इज द फंक्शन द बिहेवियर or the language is going to serve in that child's environment. So that is what is the major controlling variable we focus on, not कि कौन सा form है, कौन सा part of syntax है, या कैसे हम develop कर रहे हैं. Clearly, in the behavioral account, the language was classified into two forms by Skinner, which is a verbal behavior and a non-verbal behavior. Today, we'll be focusing only more on the verbal part of the behavior. Let's talk about the verbal behavior. Now, what is verbal behavior? Anything which has two people interacting with each other, right? इसमें दो पार्ट होते हैं, vocal and non-vocal. Okay, so any behavior that is reinforced through the mediation of other people, जो दो बंदों के बीच में बात हो रही है, मैंने कुछ बोला, आपने रिप्लाई किया, that is a form of a verbal behavior, right? जिसका to and fro हो रहा है, बैठे बैठे खुद से बात करना is not a part of a verbal behavior. It's a form of a speech, but it is not a part of a verbal behavior. Okay, now इसमें दो पार्ट्स होते हैं, vocal जहाँ पे sounds, words, phrases, and non-vocal जैसे कि pointing, gesturing, हाथ पकड़ के, मम्मी का हाथ पकड़ के किसी की तरफ करना, कुछ point करना पसंद है, कुछ लिख के देना, right? So these are the different forms of verbal behavior, which also is known as the non-vocal part of the behavior, right? So this all come under verbal behavior. Remember, anything which is mediated between two people is a form of a verbal behavior, right? Language is classified into further functional categories. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, that is the verbal operands. Okay, now what are these verbal operands which make the core portion of verbal behavior? जब हम verbal behavior बच्चों की develop कर रहे होते हैं, हम कहते हैं हम verbal behavior पे काम कर रहे हैं, तो हम इन verbal operands को develop कर रहे होते हैं in detail, जो बच्चे की language और उसकी communication skills को facilitate करते हैं, improve करते हैं, better करते हैं. Now, what are these verbal operands? Right? These verbal operands are mand, tact, intraverbals, echoics, transcript, and textual. Right? We will discuss all these in details कि basically ये होते क्या है. But these are the major verbal operands that form the core area of the verbal behavior. But अगर हम
Excuse me, ma'am. There is something in the middle of the screen. I can't read the yellow arrow. What is
I'm
written
so sorry. Can you see now? Is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know. Okay. So these are the verbal operands, like I was saying, जिसका core part बनता है language development. There is a non-verbal component also, which is basically. Did somebody had a question? Okay, I'll continue. Okay. So we will discuss all these components in detail. Okay, pay attention because you might have MCQs में questions from this component also. So mand. Now what is a mand, right? So इसका example है, जैसे there is a kid called Jack. Okay, he's deprived of cookie, मतलब उसको cookie नहीं मिली थी, तो वो बोलता है cookie और उसको cookie मिल जाती है. So अगर हम ये ABC contingency देखते हैं, asking for cookie being a behavior, एंटीसीडेंट क्या था, बच्चे को कुकी नहीं मिली थी काफी टाइम से, उसका खाने का मन किया, मोटिवेशन था, और कॉन्सिक्वेंस क्या था, उसको कुकी मिल गई खाने को. So this is our ABC contingency. So we say कि this is a one verbal operant mand, which means that the speaker asks for what he or she wants, right? Only verbal operand which is directly benefiting the speaker because it is motivated, it is dependent upon the motivation operant of the speaker and the consequences what the speaker is asking for. Simple language में mand is derived from the word demand. मैं demand कर रही हूँ आपसे, मुझे ये चाहिए, ठीक है, तो मेरा जो मन कर रहा है, like something that I prefer, right, मैं वो मांगूंगी, आप मुझे exactly वो दोगे. तो अगर मैंने आपसे कुकी मांगी है और आप मेरे को चॉकलेट दे रहे हो, तो वो mand नहीं है, क्योंकि मैंने तो कुकी मांगी है, मेरा मन कुकी खाने का था, right? So this is a form of a verbal operand which is very very crucial for you to develop जब आप बच्चे के साथ सबसे पहले काम कर रहे होते हैं, and this develops at a faster pace because it is directly connected to the child's needs. तो जब आप बच्चे की मोटिवेशन के साथ काम करो, बच्चे को आपकी अटेंशन चाहिए, आप उसको बोलते बोलो एक्सक्यूज मी, मैं आपको अटेंशन दे रही हूँ, बच्चे को पानी चाहिए, आप उसको पानी बोलना सिखा रहे हो, डायरेक्टली वो पानी बोलता है, उसको पानी मिलता है. सो इट हैज अ डायरेक्ट connection, and it is very very beneficial for the speaker in itself. So that's the first form of verbal operant that we develop and we work around with the kid is a man. Okay, the second verbal operant that we work with the child is tact. Okay, example, एक बच्चे ने ट्रक देखा या हमने उसको दिखाया एक पिक्चर ट्रक की, और हमने पूछा व्हाट इज दिस, जैसे मैंने फोन दिखाया, आई से व्हाट इज दिस, एंड द चाइल्ड सेज फोन, एंड आई से गुड जॉब, या मैं उसको कैंडी देती हूँ, वेरी गुड, मैं बिहेवियर रीइंफोर्स कर रही हूँ. सो आई माइट यूज अ टैंजिबल रीइंफोर्सर, या मैं गुड जॉब भी दे सकती हूँ, मैं टिक मार्क भी दे सकती हूँ, स्टार भी, सम फॉर्म ऑफ रीइंफोर्सर आई गिव. So what component of verbal operant I am engaging in? It is a tag. So as simple as किसी भी चीज को जो आप देख सकते हो उनको लेबल करना या उनको नेम करना, हम टैक्ट कहते हैं अपने applied behavioral analysis के verbal operands के अंदर. It is evoked by a non-verbal stimulus, or sometimes it could also be a stimulus. Non-verbal is मैंने present किया and I'm showing you something and you see it. That's a non-verbal stimulus, and you say phone, right? That is what it means, and the consequence is generalized reinforcer. I'm not giving you phone. I am giving you good, very good, shabash, or a candy, or something else you're working for. So that is a tag. And ABC contingency mein antecedent is the presentation of the item in itself. Behavior is you labeling that item, and the consequence is a receiving a praise or another form of generalized reinforcer, right? So that's the second verbal operand that we develop when we are working on the language development of the kid. Let's go to the third one, intraverbal, right? So one of the examples of intraverbal is जो हम बच्चों को बहुत सारी सिखाते हैं, rhymes, like we do twinkle twinkle little and we stop and the child fills in star, right? Johnny Johnny, yes, and the child fills in papa, right? That is, we are doing some kind of fill-ins, right? Dog says, बच्चा बोलता है भाव भाव, cat says meow meow. इसमें अगर आप देखोगे what is happening, the speaker is differentially responds to the variable response, right? आपने एक चीज पूछी, right? और उसको वो आगे fill in कर रहा है, right? It is evoked by some kind of verbal stimulus. मैंने कुछ instruction दिया और मैंने pause किया, बच्चा उसको complete कर रहा है, right? So that is a form of an intraverbal we are doing. And the consequence in this scenario is again a generalized form of reinforcer. Another good distinguish between intraverbal and tact, which we usually do, is we say intraverbal is something which is not maybe present in the environment, right? क्योंकि हम बहुत बारी हम जो भी language और conversation बच्चे को सिखाते हैं, be it tact, be it math, be it echoics, जो भी हम आगे सीखेंगे, our goal is to bring it to an intraverbal level. और intraverbal level इसलिए क्योंकि that is a higher form of language development. जैसे कि today I can talk to you about so many things, right? अगर मैं आपसे पूछूं कि मेरे दिमाग में ना एक फ्रूट आ रहा है जो कि A से स्टार्ट होता है और वो लाल रंग का होता है, तो ये कौन सा फ्रूट है? So a lot of you would think of apple, right? अगर सेम में मैं बोलूं पर मैं कोई फ्रूट सोच रही हूँ जो लाल रंग का है और वो S से स्टार्ट होता है, right? So I'm evoking you to think about a strawberry. How do you know? Because आपको कभी मैंने या आपने कभी स्ट्रॉबेरी देखी थी, आपको पता है वो लाल रंग की है. So there was a way that you were explored that thing, you were introduced to that thing, right? So and that to an intraverbal level of communication you build up to कि जब वो environment में नहीं है पर हम उसके बारे में बात करें, आप मेरे को फिर भी उसके बारे में बता सकते हो, right? So that's a higher level that we develop every verbal operant that we are working on with kids. So जब हम language develop करते हैं, बहुत सारे ये verbal operants actually interlinked होते हैं एक दूसरे से. That is how it develops the entire component of language. So intraverbal, for you guys to completely understand this, there is a kind of a verbal stimulus. ठीक है, एक बंदा कोई क्वेश्चन पूछता है, बच्चा उसको fill in करता है या आप fill in करते हो, and you receive a generalized condition reinforcer. That's intraverbal.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
There is a hand raised by Rukmani ma'am.
Yeah. So, Priyanka, I just wanted to ask, in tact, you can't ask what is this. You just show the
So
object, is it?
basically, the way the tact is, there should be a non-verbal stimulus. But जब हम बच्चों को सिखा रहे होते हैं, we do use a verbal kind of an instruction. What is this? हम लोग वो generalize जरूर करते हैं, हम use कर सकते हैं, right?
Okay.
But your ultimate goal should be कि हम कल को question ना भी पूछे, बच्चा देख रहा है, he can say it,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Welcome. Should I move forward?
Yes, please.
Okay, so intervals, echoics. Okay, echoics is very simple. It is like a clear one-to-one correspondence to a thing, right? Teacher ने बोला ball, बच्चे ने बोला ball, और teacher ने एक generalized reinforcer दिया, good, very good. That's echoic. As simple as that. So the speaker repeats the verbal behavior of the other, exact correspondence of the verbal behavior to the other. Which means अगर मैंने बोला say ball और बच्चे ने बोला ball, that is not a true echoic. True echoic would be, I said say ball, the child says say ball, right? And I say good job saying it. I say sit down, the child says sit down. That's a true echoic. If I say sit down, the child says down. That's not an echoic. So echoic is a complete one-to-one correspondence of क्या बोला क्या, exactly वो repeat करना verbally, and you get a generalized reinforcer. That's an echoic. Okay, let's quickly move forward. Textual. Another kind of a verbal operand, which is textual. It is.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
It's Ratmika. There is a hand raise here.
Okay.
It,
Yes, please ask. I can't see you, but please ask the question if you have.
Hello.
Yes, please.
My question is, I just wanted to clear the usually children with autism. I've seen that they have a tendency to repeat what we say. They have echolalia.
Yes.
So is it a way of learning, or should we try? What can be done regarding that? Can it be learning for them to develop language, because they have lack in communication? So echolalia, can it be used as a method of teaching?
Definitely. Very, very, very good question. So मैम echolalia, yes, definitely. ये होता है कि बहुत सारे बच्चे हम जब देखते हैं, like we do see they have a very strong echoic repertoire, मतलब वो echolalia होता है. वहां पे we use that echolalia. जैसे मैंने बोला, जब हम लैंग्वेज डेवलपमेंट कर रहे होते हैं, हम ये सारे टेक्निक्स यूज करते हैं बच्चे को इंडिपेंडेंट लैंग्वेज बनाने के लिए. हमारा गोल echoic का यूज करने का ये नहीं होता कि बच्चे को echolalia सिखाना है. जैसे मैं echoic को एक प्रॉम्प्ट की तरह यूज कर सकती हूँ. मेरे को पता है बच्चे का echoic अच्छा है, तो मैं फोन दिखाऊंगी, मैं बोलूंगी व्हाट इज दिस फोन, बच्चे ने बोला फोन, आई विल से गुड जॉब, राइट. एंड देयर इज अ प्रॉपर फेडिंग प्रोसीजर. जब हम करते हैं echolalia बच्चों के साथ, वी हैव टू बी वेरी केयरफुल कि हम कैसे टीचिंग हम ऐसे स्ट्रक्चर करते हैं कि echolalia को यूज करके हम इंडिपेंडेंट बच्चों की स्पीच डेवलप करते हैं, जहां पे वी आर रीइंफोर्सिंग इंडिपेंडेंट लैंग्वेज and putting echolalia in certain situations on extinction. And that's what functional communication training में आप और समझेंगे अच्छे से. ठीक है, but it is something that we do use in our favor, and you can develop very good repertoire of language if a child has echolalia.
Ma'am, one more thing. When what I've seen is that when we say take the ball, or okay, I'm just saying an example, okay, not exactly. So the only thing the child repeat is usually the last word.
Right.
That's what I've seen. Mostly they repeat only the last. If I say two words, they repeat only the last one.
Okay, so that is ठीक है. So what you're trying to tell me is कि वो one word repeat करता है, even though आप 3 word का phrase बोल रहे हैं, right?
Yeah, only the last one. Why only the last one? I've always been confused, because how much we try, they always repeat the last word.
ओके, सो मैम ये थोड़ा सा टेक्निकल क्वेश्चन है. तो बेसिकली क्या है, मे बी बच्चे की हमारे वर्बल बिहेवियर में एक टर्मिनोलॉजी है जो हम यूज करते हैं, बच्चे का स्पीच का लेंथ कितना है. ठीक है. सो मे बी बच्चे का जो स्पीड का कम्युनिकेशन का लेंथ है वो ही इज कंफर्टेबल यूजिंग 1 to 2 phrases. कुड बी, आई डोंट नो द चाइल्ड, बेस्ड ऑन आप जो मुझे बता रहे हैं, राइट. तो
Okay.
उसका जो हम लोग ये भी इस पे जब हम फंक्शनल कम्युनिकेशन ट्रेनिंग करते हैं, हम आगे आप समझोगे हम बच्चे की कैसे 1 word से लेके 2 words, साउंड से लेके वर्ड फॉर्मेशन, 2 बड़े सेंटेंसेस बोलना भी डेवलप करते हैं. तो आई गेट इट. वो ट्रू, अगर वर्बल ऑपरेंट की बात करूं तो वो बच्चा ट्रू एकोइक तो नहीं कर रहा है, राइट, बट डेफिनेटली लास्ट वर्ड आपका रिपीट कर रहा है. नाउ अगेन इट कम्स डाउन टू जो आपने अभी 3 दिन में अच्छे से ट्रेनिंग में समझेगा कि आपके पास पावर है, इफ यू हैव द राइट रीइंफोर्सर, राइट, टू मॉडिफाई अ बिहेवियर. आप किस बिहेवियर को रीइंफोर्स कर रहे हो और किस बिहेवियर को रीइंफोर्स नहीं कर रहे हो, राइट. सो अगर आपको चाहिए पिक द बॉल और बच्चा बोल रहा है बॉल, आप उसको नहीं अटेंशन दे रहे, नहीं रीइंफोर्स कर रहे, वेट कर रहे हो कि वो बॉल पिक करे और जैसे ही वो पिक करे आप बोल रहे हो गुड जॉब, तो पिकिंग विल बी रीइंफोर्स्ड. इन फ्यूचर इफ यू यूज द राइट रीइंफोर्सर यू विल सी कि बच्चा बॉल पिक कर रहा है और वो आपका रेपिटेशन नहीं कर रहा है. You
Okay.
understand मैं क्या कह रही हूँ?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is how you shape an echoic to more functional language or more functional way of performing by just using your reinforcers very wisely.
Oh, thank you so much.
No, welcome. Okay. So, should I move forward? Any other questions? Okay, so I'm assuming no. Once we take a break, iske baad I'll take more questions. Okay, so that's echoic. Now comes to textual. Okay, what is textual? Just reading a text. अगर GRAPES लिखे without comprehension right now, क्योंकि मैं पूछ नहीं थी grapes क्या होता है, fruit होता है, क्या होता है, सिर्फ GRAP एक text लिखा है, बच्चा उसको देख के पढ़ता है grapes, right? And I say good job. So that's a verbal operand the child is engaging in is textual, right? So इसमें जो हमारा antecedent है वो है एक written text, behavior है बच्चे का उसको read करना, और हमारा consequence है again एक generalized form of reinforcer which could be a token saying good job, saying very good, whatever जो बच्चे के लिए identified reinforcer है, right? So that's a textual. The next one is transcript. Now, what is a transcript? Transcript is writing and spelling words. जैसे हम स्कूल में dictations करते थे ना, that is a form of a transcript. Teacher ने बोला spell book, बच्चे ने copy में लिखा BOOK, right? लिखा exact like spellings, right? That is, and the teacher says good job, आपकी spellings अच्छी है, very good, right? You spell the book right, different ways. So that means the verbal operand the child has engaged in is transcript. Clear? So the textual mean it's a written text you are reading, and transcript mean you are spelling the text that has been spoken to you. That's a transcript. Okay, now let's quickly review the concept so far. We did demand, which is demand. So derived from demand, बच्चे जो बच्चे का मन होता है वो उसके लिए मांगता है, हम उसको वो चीज देते हैं exactly जो उसने मांगा, right? Then we did tact, that is we present something. Okay, it could be a non-verbal stimulus, or we might pair saying what is this, right? And the child labels the item that is presented and you say good job, very good job. That was tact. The third one that we engaged in was intraverbal, that is doing fill-ins, like dog says bow bow, twinkle twinkle little star, and we say good job, that's the right answer. That was intraverbal. Echoic was one-to-one correspondence. मैंने बोला पापा, बच्चे ने बोला पापा, मैंने बोला good job saying papa, right? So that's exact one-to-one correspondence. That was echoic. The fifth that we spoke about was textual, which is like I said something and the child, there was a text given in writing and the child read it, जो भी लिखा था, and I say good job, very, and that is a one he engaged in is a textual. The transcript was dictation. I said something and the child wrote the spellings of that thing. That was transcript. Now I want you guys to unmute and any one of you give me the answer. What kind of verbal operand the kid or the person is engaging in when he's saying, I am hungry?
Ma'am?
Man.
Good job. Yes, it is man. Very good. Nice. It is a man. Next one. crying because in the past crying resulted in access to food.
I think it is also a meant.
Right. I know it is not that the child is asking for food, but crying का maybe function ऐसे develop हो गया है कि crying, right? So you are right. It is a form of a mand. It is not an appropriate one, but it is a mand. Next one. Reading the word brown when saying brown.
Texture.
Right.
Texture.
Very good. Right.
Yes.
Next one. Signing for a preferred activity. That's right. It's a mand. I know it would be confusing for you. जैसे मैंने बोला था, verbal behavior is both vocal and non-vocal. अगर बच्चा vocally request करके चीज मांग रहा है, it is a mand. अगर बच्चा उसी चीज के लिए हमने कोई response सिखाया है, जैसे कि picture exchange communication या sign सिखाए हैं, या बच्चे को हमने आवाज या प्रोलोगो ऐप, एक टेक्निकल ऐप यूज करके बोलना सिखाया, बच्चा उसमें एंगेज कर रहा है, राइट, अपनी प्रेफर्ड चीज मांगने के लिए जहाँ पे उसका मोटिवेशन है, इट इज अ काइंड ऑफ वर्बल ऑपरेंट ही इज एंगेजिंग इट. नेक्स्ट वन, pointing to an object, favorite object on the shelf.
Nine for item.
Very good, very nice, and I like how you're specifying it. It is a man for item by pointing at something. Nice. Okay, being asked, what is your name, and responding Xenia.
Intraverbal.
Very good. It is an intraverbal. Nice job. Okay. Being asked, what is 2 plus 2, and responding, what is 2 plus 2?
Echoic.
Echoic.
Echoic. That's right. It is an echoic. Being asked to spell finished and writing finished.
Transcriptive.
Very good. Oh, guys, you guys are pro now. I can see that. Pointing to a car and saying blue. Maybe the car is blue. So pointing to a car. That is right. Good job, guys. That's exactly what the behavior was. And now, before we move on to functional communication training, the detail of an elaboration of man training, you guys have any question, please shoot.
Can you please show the last slide again?
This one?
Yeah, where you gave the examples and you asked us to...
Can you see? Okay. Can you see my slide right now?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, 1 second. Now, can you see it?
It has not come in.
No, ma'am. Your present. I think you stopped sharing. your
1
screen.
second. Okay, like, give me just 1 second. Sorry. Here you go. Now, can you see?
It's come. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. I think it's good. We are like in time. So no questions, I'm assuming, right? So let's move forward with functional communication training. All right, FCT, functional communication training. Functional communication training, what is it? Aapne thoda bahut, I think one of my colleagues worked with you talking about what is the function of a behavior, right? On the second day, you learned about the antecedent strategies, right? FCT is one of the antecedent strategies as well that we work on when we are working on developing communication for the child. In a simple way, it is a procedure. It's a differential reinforcement procedure used to reduce challenging behavior, okay, by teaching a child to communicate what their wants and needs are, which is pertaining to a function in that situation. So basically, बहुत layman language में क्या है कि इस सिचुएशन में मेरे बच्चे को एक एप्रोप्रिएट लैंग्वेज यूज करनी चाहिए थी, बट उसकी जगह वो एक चैलेंजिंग बिहेवियर में एंगेज कर रहा है, right? Based on the 4 functions you had learned, but FCT will focus on to the 3 functions. It is also on the basis of the fact that we do that the basic function of any behavior is a skill deficit, and in this case the skill deficit is communication. क्योंकि बच्चे को नहीं पता है मेरे को इस सिचुएशन में क्या बोलना चाहिए, whatever he knows or whatever in the past has been some way or the other reinforced by the parent as a form of communication, the child is engaging in that. A lot of times which happens is, जब आपने देखा होगा बच्चे बहुत छोटे होते हैं, right? The only thing that they know is 0 to 3 months is crying या smiling, right? But a mother can very clearly distinguish between ये वाला रोना is because शायद उसकी nappy dirty हो गई है, या ये वाला रोना is because उसको भूख लगी है, या ये वाला रोना is, मैंने फर्स्ट बार सुना है, हो सकता है उसके पेट में दर्द है या कोई, because it is nothing what to do. Now how that differentiation is because the child has formed different ways of crying, right? Instead of talking, the child is crying. With our kids, what happens is when they grow big, right, they might be delayed in speech production or language development. So what happens is whatever the behavior, the initial crying or smiling was there, that gets more and more intense as they grow up, right? This is one of the example. In every situation, again, there's a disclaimer, it would not be always cry, but some of a behavior, challenging behavior doesn't always mean कि बच्चा किसी को मार रहा है या बच्चा किसी को हिट कर रहा है. In our behavior analysis term, it also means any behavior which is replacing an alternative behavior. मतलब इस जगह पे बच्चे को मांगना चाहिए था बट वो हिट करके चला गया, is a challenging behavior, right? इस सिचुएशन में बच्चे को आके मुझे बोलना चाहिए था मुझे बाहर घूमने जाना है, बट वो रोने लग गया. उसको मेरी अटेंशन चाहिए थी, वो रोने लग गया. मैंने काम प्रेजेंट किया, वो रोने लग गया. So in situation में that crying is a challenging behavior. Crying otherwise is not a challenging behavior, right? बच्चे को चोट लगी है, वो रो रहा है, is not that but it's a challenging behavior. It is very situational. So I'm putting a disclaimer. जब हम functions के बारे में बात करते हैं, we always see one scenario, right? And when we are always saying please ignore the behavior, we mean you are ignoring the behavior. Does not mean कि आप बच्चे को ignore करेंगे. Never do that. Okay, does not mean बच्चा रो रहा है तो आप बच्चे को भूल जाएंगे. No, you're just ignoring the behavior, and simultaneously we work on developing alternative behaviors, right? And how we do that is what we are going to learn further. There are some resources. I will also share one of Karen Durant का एक बहुत अच्छा article है FCT पे. I will share it with you guys also to read, which will actually describe the FCT in a very good way for you guys. A lot of it would be there in the training also today. So let's talk about how do we modify a challenging behavior, right, through FCT by building in an alternative behavior in its place. Okay, so the steps involved in FCT, the major steps that are involved and which are very, very important and we'll be discussing in details also are completing an FBA, that is a functional behavior assessment, to know what is the function of this behavior in this scenario. इस scenario में ये behavior का क्या function है, ताकि जब मुझे replacement behavior सोचना है, I am very accurate with my data और मैं सही replacement behavior चुन रही हूँ, right? Choose the type of communication. मैं किस टाइप की कम्युनिकेशन बच्चे के साथ चूज करूंगी, मैं कैसे एनवायरनमेंट को टीचिंग बनाऊंगी, स्टिमुलेटिंग बनाऊंगी कि मैं जो भी कम्युनिकेशन बच्चे को डेवलप करना चाह रही हूँ बच्चा वो सीख पा रहा है, राइट? एंड देन how am I going to teach that communication to the child? And now after teaching, how I'm going to feed the prompts that have I used to teach the child. Now let's first understand what is an FBA, which I know one of my colleagues has shared very beautifully with you guys, and I hope you all understand the functions of the behavior very, very well. So in this case, let's look at the 3 functions of the behavior. Say attention, right? When the child wanted attention, the child wanted access to something, उसको कुछ चाहिए था तो उसने behavior में engage किया, या बच्चे को escape चाहिए था, उसको काम नहीं करना था, मैंने को कुछ बोला उसको वो नहीं करना था, या एक एनवायरनमेंट से एस्केप चाहिए था, एक क्लासरूम में नहीं रहना था, काम नहीं करना था. तो एस्केप could also have varied functions, right? So what is it? move forward, or for you to understand better, let's watch a video first. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
In this video, we will explore how you can reduce challenging behaviors by teaching your child how to appropriately communicate their wants and needs in a functional way. This is referred to as Functional Communication Training, or FCT. Behavior is a form of communication, and there's a purpose or a function behind every behavior. To figure out the function of their behavior, it's important to understand possible reasons why they're frustrated. Maybe they want your attention, or they want access to an item, or they want to get out of doing something altogether. A good way to help your child is to teach an easy and appropriate way to signal their needs. But how do we figure out the best way to teach this? Let's look at some scenarios. Here's a child who's been presented with some work. She starts whining and pushes the work away. The adult ends up removing the task so her child can calm down. Let's look at why this child got upset in the ABC context. A stands for antecedent, or what happened right before the problem behavior. The adult presented work to her child. B is for the behavior of concern, the tantrum behavior. And C stands for consequence, or what happened immediately after the behavior. In this case, the adult removed the work. This child has now learned that she can get out of work by engaging in these tantrum behaviors.
So what it is telling the entire video is looking at this situation, right? What happened? Teacher आई, एक बच्चा बैठा था, ठीक है, and teacher ने work present किया, which was in antecedent. Behavior क्या हुआ? उसने tantrum दिखाया, उसने sheet को push किया, बोला मुझे आवाजें निकाली, right? So that was a behavior which we take it as a tantrum. और consequence क्या हुआ? Teacher ने क्या किया? Immediately उसके बाद काम हटा दिया, right? Again, it is one scenario. Again, there's a disclaimer. हम कभी भी एक situation को देख के नहीं बोलते कि behavior का function ये है, right? So that is why I think जब आपकी functional behavior analysis की training भी हुई होगी, बार-बार बोला गया होगा, we do repetitive trials to be sure of कि function यही है. एक बारी में you can never say ये function है. We can yes have an assumption कि maybe yes, this hypothesis कि ये हो सकता है. Let's assess it further to be sure. तो कभी भी एक situation मत सोचेगा. This is just for the sake of video for you to understand. So given maybe बार-बार ये होता है, तो could be कि बच्चे ने tantrum को as a form of escape बना लिया कि जब भी मुझे काम नहीं करना है, मुझे करके sheet move कर देती है, teacher task remove कर देती है. That is what this slide is explaining to you. Let's watch further.
Approach is to encourage an easier and safer way to communicate her need for a break, whether it's verbal, signed, or handing over a picture card. After asking for a break, that's truly what she'll get. So now remove the work for 2 minutes.
So what happened was, जब टीचर ने इसको फंक्शनल कम्युनिकेशन ट्रेनिंग के हिसाब से चेंज किया, सो उसने क्या देखा, ये बच्चे का रेpertoire, लेट मी यूज अ पिक्चर एक्सचेंज कम्युनिकेशन व्हिच इज ब्रेक, एंड व्हाई दैट हैपेंड अभी हम आगे एक्सप्लेन करेंगे. सो द रिप्लेसमेंट बिहेवियर इंस्टेड ऑफ एंगेजिंग इन टैंट्रम, की टैंट्रम के अलावा मैं वर्क प्रेजेंट करती हूँ, आप टैंट्रम में एंगेज करने के अलावा मुझे बोलो मेरे को ब्रेक चाहिए, या पिक्चर एक्सचेंज करके बोलो मुझे ब्रेक चाहिए, या साइन करो ब्रेक का, मैं आपको ब्रेक दे दूंगी, which is I will remove the work. So the consequence and the antecedent was same. We modified the behavior of the child, right? And also you have to be very quick in terms of tantrum होने से पहले जब वो precursors है, because हम बार बार देख रहे थे जैसे हम present कर रहे हैं behavior होता है, we immediately prompt the child, break मांगो, आपको break मिल जाएगी, right? But a very very important component of it is, जब हम बच्चे को ब्रेक दे रहे हैं, हम कंप्लीटली उसको नॉन रीइंफोर्सिंग बना रहे हैं. मतलब कि ये नहीं कि ब्रेक में द चाइल्ड विल हैव एक्सेस टू समथिंग ही प्रेफर्स, बिकॉज हमारा गोल ये भी है कि ब्रेक बाद में बोरिंग हो जाए एंड बच्चा स्टार्ट्स वर्किंग विद अस, बिकॉज वर्क करने से ही गेट्स एक्सेस टू his preferred items, right? हम alternatively ये भी work कर रहे हैं, but right now the only behavior we replaced was asking for breaks instead of showing tantrum. And this is what happened, and let's see what happens next.
This alternative behavior still fulfills her need to escape, but it's communicated easily and appropriately. Be careful not to reward your child with a break activity. A break is simply the removal of a task for a brief period of time. The ultimate goal is that your child finishes the work and gets an even more rewarding break, such as a favorite show, a fun book, or an exciting toy. This same ABC breakdown can be helpful when considering other situations we encounter. Here, your child notices that you're currently using the family iPad. She reaches for it and begins to whine and cry, and you hand it over because you know that's what she wants, and it will calm her down.
So इस scenario में क्या हुआ? Okay, the mother, the one who was already sitting, let's assume she's the mother, and वो iPad लेके बैठी है. बच्चा walks in, whine करता है, iPad पकड़ता है, और मॉम क्या करती है? iPad छोड़ देती है, और बच्चा iPad लेके बैठ जाता है. अगर अब ये repetitively ये हो रहा है, तो हमने क्या किया? हमने whining एंड रीचिंग आउट को रीइंफोर्सिंग बना दिया कि तुम वाइन करते हो तो तुम्हें मिल जाता है. तो बच्चा क्या सीखेगा? हर बारी मुझे अगर आईपैड चाहिए, मुझे जाना है, मम्मी से पकड़ना है, वाइन करना है, मुझे आईपैड मिल जाता है, इंस्टेड ऑफ सेइंग कि मुझे आईपैड दे दो, राइट? सो यहाँ पे द फंक्शन ऑफ अ बिहेवियर इज व्हाट? वाइनिंग, राइट? व्हाट डज द चाइल्ड वांट्स इज द आईपैड. And because mom ने whining को reinforce कर दिया, the whining is becoming stronger. Let's see what you can do otherwise to have a more appropriate functional communication instead of whining.
Instead, encouraging her to say "my turn" is a much easier way for her to communicate rather than throwing a tantrum. Acknowledge her communication attempt and use a visual countdown to praise her calm and patient moments before you hand it over. The ultimate goal is for her to appropriately request and wait for the item she wants. And lastly, you're busy cleaning dishes, and suddenly your child runs up and inappropriately hits you because she wants to show you something that interests her. You now have to stop what you're doing to look. A better alternative to this is to show that they can gently tap your arm with less force than before. The ultimate goal here is for them to appropriately wait for your attention, rather than having to drop everything to honor their requests. In order to figure out how to help them communicate better, it's important to really think about why your child is showing challenging behaviors. Remember,
Hence, understanding what the function that behavior is serving, right? So we saw a situation where there was attention, right? When she was washing dishes, the child comes and takes attention. What she does is she shapes it by telling her, you tap on my shoulder and I will give you attention. Instead of when you come and you pull me, I'll give you attention. We saw when they wanted access in the second scenario where usne jaake iPad खींचा. The first scenario was escape when they wanted to escape, right? Now let's discuss what we saw in detail. कि हमने basically what did we do when we say we did FCT. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So when we say that we understand सबसे पहले the function of the behavior, the first step in FCT, हम पहले देखते हैं कि ये जो behavior है, is it attention maintain? क्या ये बच्चा attention लेने के लिए कर रहा है? क्या ये बच्चा किसी चीज को access पाने के लिए कर रहा है? उसको कोई चाहिए इसलिए वो रो रहा है, right? या ये बच्चा इस situation से escape करना चाहता है? Because once we know the function of the behavior, हम exactly वही language और वही communication बच्चे को पहले देंगे. Why? Because the MO is for that thing, right? तो अगर बच्चे को escape चाहिए तो हम break मांग के escape देंगे, right? Because सबसे पहले हमारा सबसे पहला goal क्या है कि हमें challenging behavior को हटा के उसकी जगह appropriate behavior लाना है, right? So सबसे पहले it is very very important whatever behavior you're focusing in a given situation. Okay, you understand the function of a behavior. Another thing, one behavior can also have multiple functions. So, एक situation में crying attention के लिए हो सकती है, वही crying दूसरी situation में access के लिए भी हो सकती है. राइट और तीसरी सिचुएशन में वही क्राइंग एस्केप के लिए भी हो सकती है. सो वन बिहेवियर कैन आल्सो हैव मल्टीपल फंक्शंस. सो यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट इस सिचुएशन में व्हेन एवरी टाइम दिस इज हैपनिंग, crying has this function, and only in that situation we are going to use that particular replacement behavior. Okay, so once we've understood the function of the behavior, the second thing when we are doing functional communication training is we as trainers is we look at what is the child's language repertoire abhi. ठीक है, ये तो हम लोगों ने वीडियो देखी, उसमें the बच्चा was good, but with my child, so for example I have a kid named Josh. मैं Josh के साथ वर्क कर रही हूँ, ठीक है, और मैं देखती हूँ कि उसको एक सिचुएशन में जब भी मेरी अटेंशन चाहिए होती है वो Josh comes and वो मुझे किक करके जाता है, right? And every time I took an FBA and I saw kicking was, the function of kicking was attention seeking, क्योंकि वो automatically मेरा response अगर वो kick करता तो मैं बोलती थी Josh don't do it, Josh don't do it. So I was giving attention, so it was maintained by attention. Now if I have to design a functional communication training plan for that kid, I will first see FBA and I know attention maintain है. The second thing मैं देखूंगी कि मेरी जोश का अभी current language repertoire क्या है, क्या जोश बोल सकता है, like does he have some words, अगर वर्ड्स हैं तो वो वन वर्ड कम्युनिकेशन करता है या वो सेंटेंस में बात करता है या वो साउंड्स प्रोड्यूस करता है, राइट? सो फर्स्ट इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर मी टू अंडरस्टैंड कि मेरे बच्चे का अभी लैंग्वेज रेpertoire क्या है, क्योंकि बेस्ड ऑन दैट ओनली आई विल डिसाइड कि मैं कौन सा फॉर्म ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन यूज करूंगी जब मैं रिप्लेसमेंट बिहेवियर सिखा रही हूँ. अब कौन कौन से फॉर्म्स होते हैं, राइट? अगर मेरे बच्चे की लैंग्वेज साउंड्स है, राइट, तो मैं वो वाला कम्युनिकेशन रिस्पॉन्स उठाऊंगी जिसका एफर्ट कम होगा, ठीक है, बिकॉज एक तो ऑलरेडी दैट बिहेवियर वाज मेंटेन बाय अटेंशन, मैं उसको तोड़ के रिप्लेसमेंट बिहेवियर सिखा रही हूँ, तो मेरे को वो लेना पड़ेगा जो बच्चा थोड़ा ज्यादा आसानी से कर ले, ताकि उसको कल को लगे यार लात मारने से बेटर है मैं प्रियंका को इस कम्युनिकेशन को यूज करके अटेंशन ले लूं, राइट? सो द रिस्पॉन्स एफर्ट शुड बी लेस, अ लिटिल लेस. सो उसके लिए इफ फॉर एग्जाम्पल जॉश सिर्फ साउंड प्रोड्यूस कर सकता है तो मैं उसको शोल्डर पे टैप करना सिखाऊंगी, मैं उसको एक्सक्यूज मी बोलना नहीं सिखाऊंगी, राइट? अगर जॉश बोल सकता है तो इंस्टेड ऑफ नॉट जस्ट टैपिंग, आई माइट यूज टैपिंग एंड एक्सक्यूज मी बोथ. आप दो फॉर्म्स ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन भी यूज कर सकते हो. So to understand, या अगर वो मेरा जो ज्यादा लैंग्वेज, he has a very good language repertoire, he can talk in paragraphs and sentences, so maybe मैं टैप करना भी नहीं सिखाऊंगी and I'll just say excuse me Priyanka and he says excuse me Priyanka. I might use a textual prompt also to teach him कि ये बोलना है when you need my attention, right? And I'll use that. So it is very very important first for you to know कि मेरा बच्चा किस लेवल पे है, so that मैं जो फॉर्म ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन यूज करूंगी वो एप्ट हो. सेकेंडली उसका रिस्पॉन्स एफर्ट कम हो, राइट? तो जो बच्चा कर सकता है उससे और इजी, क्योंकि जब इजी होता है तो वो और जल्दी पिक करते हैं बिकॉज उसमें ज्यादा मेहनत नहीं लगती है, राइट? सो द फर्स्ट दैट इज second thing that you have to see. The third thing you have to see is whatever response में communication का सिखा रही हो उसका recognition क्या है, like social recognition क्या है. A very simple example of this is we always ask parents जब हम communication पे work कर रहे होते हैं कि मैम या सर आपका preferred mode of communication क्या है. आप घर में हिंदी में बात करते हो, आप इंग्लिश में बात करते हो, या अगर हम ये साइन सिखा रहे हैं ओके आप ये साइन को आप समझ पाएंगे. और इफ यू आर टीचिंग अ पर्टिकुलर साइन वी मेक श्योर द पेरेंट्स आर वेरी वेल वर्स्ड कि इस साइन का मतलब ये है. व्हाई इट इज इम्पोर्टेंट? बिकॉज वी हैव टू really encourage that वो जो भी हम रिस्पॉन्स बच्चे को सिखा रहे हैं that is very easily generalized, right? दूसरे को वो समझ आ रहा है. अगर तो दूसरे को समझ नहीं आ रहा है तो वो सिर्फ टैपिंग मेरे साथ रहेगा, वो किसी और के साथ नहीं करेगा, बिकॉज किसी और के साथ उसका फंक्शन वो डेवलप ही नहीं हो रहा है अटेंशन देने का. So you have to also look at कि उसका social recognition क्या है. So you also keep this thing in mind when you are designing a communication response जो आप उसको alternate बनाना चाहते हो. Then the speed of response, कितनी जल्दी हम लोग उसको prompt करके सिखा पाएंगे. अगर कोई भी response आप less effort ले रहे हो, it has a potential that बच्चा will pick it up at a faster pace and it will replace an alternative challenging behavior that is in place. Right? So that is the second thing. So you first look at what is the function. One decided the function. Your second thing to see is बच्चे का क्या रेpertoire है, so that मैं उसके हिसाब से डिजाइन करूंगी कि मैं ये चीजें यूज करके इसको चेंज करूंगी. Then comes your next thing, that is you create the teaching situations. तो मेरे पास सारा मटेरियल तैयार हो गया जो मुझे सिखाना है, मुझे फंक्शन पता है, अब मैं क्या करूंगी, I will consider that I will try and create that situation again, right? जैसे जॉश को अटेंशन चाहिए तो मैं ऑन पर्पस उसको अटेंशन नहीं दूंगी, right? With our kids it is always better that you try and contrive, और हमें बहुत बारी चीज situations contrive करनी पड़ती है in order to teach exactly the way. जैसे आपको बच्चे को सिखाने के लिए आपको materials यूज करने पड़ते हैं. अगर आप बच्चे को अल्फाबेट सिखा रहे हो तो आप ABCD के कार्ड यूज करते हो ना, the teaching learning material. The same way जब हम लैंग्वेज सिखाते हैं हम situations contrive करते हैं, those are your teaching learning materials, right, that you use. आपको वो situations create करनी पड़ती है so that आप उस situation को create करके बच्चे को prompt दे सको. जैसे कि आपने वीडियो में देखा, she again created the situation, उसने work present किया, break मांगा, उससे बच्चे से रिस्पॉन्स करवाया and the teacher went back. So you have to do that. You have to practice the replacement behavior in a more naturalistic setting, right? You do it in a contrived way and you do it naturally also. The reason we say we contrive it is because अगर हम naturally wait करते रहेंगे ना कि वो कब होगा, हम लोगों के पास repetitive trials नहीं होंगे. जैसे बच्चे को ABCD सिखाना होता है, हम कितनी बार ABCD करते हैं, Monday to Friday A दिखा के ABCD करते हैं. We do repetitive trials ना, so that the child can pick up. The same way language के लिए भी आपको बार बार वो situation contrive करके बच्चे को सिखाना पड़ता है, so that the बच्चा can fluently use and understand ये करने से मुझे ये मिलता है जो मुझे पसंद है, right? So you have to contrive. The other way of doing it is you can also use with certain kids video modeling and social stories work fantastically. तो again जब हम situation देख रहे थे कि मेरे बच्चे के लिए क्या work होगा, if you think one of your child is very good with video modeling and social stories, you can use that also to teach your child कि क्या आप मतलब basically how to use alternative communication in that way. You may also need to rearrange the environment, right, that gives the child cues, right, or remove. जैसे कि in the past, right, when he was kicking me, I used to say no. Now I will not say no, right? I will, on the contrary, ignore that kicking and teach Josh to tap, right? And Josh touches me, and I'll say yes. Batao, you wanted me. Hanshi, batao, what do you want? Because he wanted my attention, right? Sometimes it is when you guys have really paired yourself as teachers बहुत अच्छे और बच्चों को आप पसंद होते हो तो बच्चे आपके पास आते हैं. कई बार बच्चे आपके पास सिर्फ तब आते हैं, आपकी अटेंशन तब लेते हैं जब आपके पास कुछ होता है जो उनको पसंद हो, राइट? सो अटेंशन के लिए अनदर वे ऑफ कंट्राइविंग अ सिचुएशन इज सिट विद समथिंग द चाइल्ड प्रेफर्स. जैसे अगर मेरे बच्चे को फोन में गाने देखना पसंद है तो मैं गाना चला के ऐसे पीट करके बैठ जाऊंगी और गाना देखूंगी, एंड व्हेन ही कम एंड ट्राई टू deep into मैं इधर घूमूंगी, and then that is an opportunity. मैंने contrive की, मैं उसको बोलूंगी टैप करो, वो टैप करेगा, मैं बोलूंगी yes गाना देखें, come let's see together song, right? So that's how also you contrive a situation to gain attention and teach a child how to engage in alternative behavior. And always work on generalization of skills, which means not just कि आप बच्चे के साथ वो पूरा दिन करेंगे. जनरलाइजेशन मीन्स आप सारी सेटिंग में करेंगे, घर पे भी वैसे ही पेरेंट्स अटेंशन पे वर्क करेंगे, स्कूल में भी करेंगे, स्कूल में आप क्लासरूम में करेंगे, बच्चा नीचे कैफेटेरिया में जाता है वहां करेंगे, पार्क में जा रहे हैं वहां पे भी उसको अटेंशन, बिकॉज अटेंशन तो कहीं पे भी मांग सकते हैं ना. सो इफ आई एम वर्किंग विद जॉश आई विल डू इट इन डिफरेंट सेटिंग्स एनवायरमेंट्स एंड आई विल ट्रेन जो भी उसके साथ वर्क कर रहा है, मैं उन सबको ये बोलूंगी कि लिसन अटेंशन के लिए ना हम जॉश को टैप करा रहे हैं और फिर अटेंशन दे रहे हैं, सो दैट all teachers are following the exact same way of tapping and giving attention, right? So that is what we mean by generalization of skills. Everybody do it, you do it in different settings, different environment, different time of the day, right, with different people. And that is very, very important to actually boost language development, generalization of skills. The next we do it is we do communication training जो मैंने आपको दिखाया, and we always plan for the fading procedures also, right? Which means मैं अभी बच्चे को prompt fade. For example, मैं बच्चे को अभी पहले prompt कर रही हूँ टैप करो, आई एम डूइंग अ कंप्लीट प्रॉम्प्ट, मैं उसका हाथ पकड़ के टैप करवा सकती हूँ, राइट, या मैं किसी और को बोल सकती हूँ कि आप उसको टैप करवाओ, दैट इज अ prompted trial, right? I will also work on fading my prompts from physically holding to gesturing, right, from gesturing to just waiting and cueing him to tap my shoulders, right, to waiting that he does it independently. So whenever we are planning any procedures, we always plan for prompt and prompt fade. जैसे कि अभी एक मैम ने बहुत अच्छे से मेरे से एक क्विक का क्वेश्चन पूछा था, राइट, इफ माय चाइल्ड हैज एन एको रेपर्टोर और वोकली अच्छा है और मैं उसके साथ अटेंशन पे काम कर रही हूँ और मुझे पता है उसको एको ले लिया है, दैट मीन्स ही कैन रिपीट वेरी वेल व्हाट आई से, मेरा प्रॉम्प्ट, मेरा सबसे पहला गोल होगा उसके साथ कि मैं वोकल प्रॉम्प्ट यूज करूंगी, बिकॉज दैट इज समथिंग ही डज वेरी वेल. सो मैं यहाँ पे ना टैपिंग यूज करूंगी, माय रिस्पॉन्स एफर्ट में लेस इज आई विल जस्ट से एक्सक्यूज मी, right, or suno, dependent upon what language he's comfortable with, Hindi, English और घर में क्या यूज होती है, with that I'll just say suno, बच्चा बोलेगा सुनो, मैं attention दूंगी, okay, I'm also planning for fading, फिर मैं बोलूंगी सुनो, वो बोलेगा सुनो, मैं attention दूंगी, then what I'll do is I'll do a prompt and a prompt fade trial, which means I'll say सुनो, बच्चा मेरे को बोलेगा सुनो, मैं नहीं सुनूंगी, मैं वेट करूंगी, वो एक और बार रिपीट करेगा सुनो, एंड देन आई लुक एट हिम एंड से यस. सो व्हाट आई एम डूइंग इज, पहला वाला सुनो मेरा सुन के उसने बोला, दूसरा वाला सुनो उसने खुद से बोला, तो जो दूसरा वाला सुनो था इट वाज इंडिपेंडेंट. सो व्हाट आई एम डूइंग इज आई एम रीइंफोर्सिंग एन इंडिपेंडेंट रिस्पॉन्स, right? So there is a possibility if my reinforcer of attention is right and the function of behavior is right, it is following the behavior, independent responses will come much faster. So that's one true example of how we do prompt and prompt fade, right? There are a lot of prompt fading trials, from fading physical prompts to gestural prompts to fading verbal prompts to textual prompts. A lot of prompts that we use in subject fading procedures, okay? And we do that. And that's how we completely develop the function communication of a child based on a certain scenario. What is the consequence of the problem behavior? जैसे कि मैंने बोला जॉश मुझे किक कर रहा था, right? तो मेरा consequence क्या होगा? I will totally ignore that behavior, right? Always remember, behaviors don't vanish, ठीक है? तो I know मैंने अपना फंक्शनल बेसिस असेसमेंट मैंने अच्छे से फंक्शन भी आइडेंटिफाई कर लिया है, मुझे पता है मेरे को मेरे बच्चे के साथ यूज भी क्या करना है, एंड आई एम ऑल प्रेप्ड अप विद ऑल द थिंग्स. तो ये नहीं होगा कि वो आज आएगा और मैं करूंगी और वो सीख जाएगा. नो, दिस डजंट हैपन, राइट? देयर विल बी अपॉर्चुनिटीज इन बीच में कि मुझे किक्स पड़ेंगी, बिकॉज in the past kicks is what was giving attention, right? So ऐसा नहीं होगा कि behavior vanish हो जाएगा. So the behavior will still be there. What I have to do as a therapist is be very clear. मुझे किक को अब reinforce नहीं करना है, okay? मुझे टैपिंग को reinforce करना है जॉश के साथ. So the behaviors will still happen. All you have to do it is you have to stop reinforcing that behavior, teach the child the alternative behavior, and you have to reinforce the alternative behavior. So you're putting still the behavior that is happening on extinction, okay, and you're reinforcing the alternative behavior. And with time, when the child understands कि मेरे kicking पे attention तो मिल ही नहीं रही है, but tapping में मिल रही है, you'll automatically see kicking going down and tapping going up, right? So that is what. So please have patience, right? Have faith in yourself, and things you will see start seeing. And it is not a long process. If you're really doing it exactly the way it is supposed to be, you will see very quick changes happening, right? But yes, for generalization, tell everybody to follow. नहीं तो ये chances भी हो सकते हैं कि वो आपके साथ behavior shape हो और किसी और के साथ नहीं हो. So always remember, whatever you're planning for a language development, you always plan for a generalization and always plan for a fading procedure, right? Now let's troubleshoot कुछ concerns जो आते हैं जब हम कर रहे होते हैं, right? No matter हम अपनी behavior analysis कितना सही कर ले, we are still working with humans, right? And humans are still very complicated to understand, be it even kids. We will be in a situation where we might not have answers and we have to go back to rethink, to reevaluate, and come up with another plan, right? So one of the procedures would be that reinforcement provided for a replacement behavior is not competent enough, right? मैं अटेंशन दे रही थी पर उसको मेरी अटेंशन नहीं चाहिए थी. जब भी वो शायद मुझसे अटेंशन मांग रहा था, वो टाइम जब मेरे पास कुछ था जो उसे चाहिए था, राइट? सो शायद मेरा फंक्शनल बिहेवियर ये था, मुझे लगा मेरी अटेंशन चाहिए, बट नो, इट वाज नॉट जस्ट अटेंशन, इट वाज अटेंशन एंड एक्सेस टू द आइटम. सो बेसिकली I had something and go. So it can happen. So in that situation, it is completely okay for you to use double reinforcement, or you to use double things when you are working on one skill, right? So, and this happens all the time, that we also, no matter we are doing functional based assessment, we might find a dual relationship of a behavior, right? It might have multiple functions. So in that case, you might withhold a tangible, you might use different things, right, to develop one function of the behavior you're developing, right? Your goal is always that the child should be motivated, right, to learn a skill. एमओ होना चाहिए. जो मैन ट्रेनिंग भी करते हैं, मोटिवेशन नहीं है, it will be a little difficult to replace behavior. So the motivation should be there for the replacement behavior, and always put the behavior that you want to go away on extinction. Another problem that happens is sometimes it is difficult to put the challenging behavior on extinction, right? हम नहीं डाल पाते हैं. जैसे कि सिचुएशन होते हैं जहाँ पे बच्चा खुद को हिट कर रहा है, right? Unknowingly we can't be like, नहीं मैं behavior ignore कर रही हूँ, आप अपने आप को बहुत ज़्यादा hit कर सकते हो. You don't want the child ending up hurting yourself, right? In that cases, I do not recommend you follow this, right? In that situation, you really need to sit. If you're working completely with self-injurious behavior, where the child is hitting himself or harming himself, or also in certain cases a child is engaging in a behavior जहाँ पे बच्चा एक ऐसे aggressive behavior में engage कर रहा है जो दूसरों को harm कर सकता है, right, and दूसरों को hurt कर सकता है, या to a level कि they start bleeding or they need a medical emergency, please do not go into कि हमें प्रियंका ने आके verbal behavior ली थी, हमें ये training दी गई थी, हमें ignore करना है. Never do that, right? In that cases, we have a very different plan things. Every time we don't say put it onto extinction, right? हम उसमें क्या करते हैं? We have a very separate techniques of actually doing a proper functional behavior assessment and seeing what intensity the child can go to. Nowhere does ABS say that you ignore or put a behavior into extinction, even when you're developing a language where it causes harm to the child or anybody else, right? So we have a proper procedure to get into. I will give you a chota sa example, but I would say if there is a situation like this, please contact one of the person who's working in the ABA field or a BCBA that you know. Please discuss with them. They will help you design a proper plan. Just for the sake of knowledge, I have this slide for you to understand that in that things, what we do is we look at the precursor behaviors, what leads to that behavior. We focus on more of minute antecedent behaviors. We detail out that, and that's how we work. Or we say, बच्चे ने one hit किया, we'll give attention. Right? We don't want to escalate the behavior. We don't want कि बच्चा अपने आप को मारी जा रहा है और हम लोग ignore कर रहे हैं और बोल रहे हैं tap shoulder करो. He's not listening, because the child will also not listen to you in one go. So in that case, we will say one hit you give attention, At least you got it under control कि बच्चे ने one hit पे ही आप रोक रहे हो, please. So that's altogether a very different. So you do not please put behaviors onto extinction, especially when you're working with kids who have a history of self-injurious behavior or aggression, and that is the behavior you're working on. Last one, right? Sometimes we can't reinforce a behavior, right? And that happens all the time. You're working in the classroom setting, आप बच्चे के साथ काम करो, बच्चा आके बोल रहा है, मैम I want to go home, and you'll be like, wow, ठीक है, that's an appropriate behavior. आज मेरा बच्चा रो नहीं रहा है, पर वो कह रहा है, मैम I want to go home, जो मैं चाहती थी. रोया नहीं है, घर जागने के मांग रहा है, but हम क्या करें, हम घर नहीं भेज सकते, right? That also happens all the time, right? Or the child will say, ma'am, I want to go to the playground and we are studying, right? It's a classroom time, right? In that case, what do you do? Right? What you do is you start teaching a child a negotiating skill, and how you do it is by you demonstrating that skill. A child walks up to you and say, ma'am, मेरे को zoo जाना है, or ma'am, I want to go home, right? You say, that's a really great idea that you want to go. Amazing that you're asking for it, right? How about we go there later? So instead of using a no, you're using an alternative by saying, yeah, that's an amazing idea. Maybe once the school gets over, I can talk to your mom about it and you can go home, right? So you can use these strategies, and we always say, please resort to more positive way of dealing with situations instead of saying no. And this way, what will happen tomorrow, you will see by looking at you, the child is also developing an alternative behavior. Simultaneously, we will also be working on teaching a child how to take a no. That is also a program that we work on with kids, how to accepting a denial. जब मुझे कोई नहीं बोलता है, right? Because that is the reality of life, right? Everybody is not going to be there with all the alternatives, right? Our kids should also be ready to accept a no, accept that things cannot happen right now. So with those kids, we also work on a separate program when we are working on functional communication training is how to tolerate a no from somebody, and you work on these alternative behaviors. So pretty much that's my time with you guys. The room is open for you guys to ask questions, if there are any, or if any feedback you guys have.
Yeah, so the last question on that slide, which said, when the child doesn't want to brush her teeth.
Yes.
So we actually had this query from a parent whose
Mhm.
daughter just was refusing to brush her teeth every day. Like
Okay.
it became a huge issue in the house. But brushing teeth is a non-negotiable. So how do we sort of help the parent to bring about this change in the child?
Okay, so what I'm understanding is the child does not like brushing teeth, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
every time we are presenting to brush teeth, and the child says no, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Not just no, there's crying and hitting and
Everything
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
Okay. So I agree. There are behaviors that we have to shape up, and they are non-negotiable. Obviously, brushing teeth is an important skill we have to do. What we do is we use a procedure called shaping, right? आप लोगों ने task analysis के बारे में पढ़ा होगा, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So what you do in a task analysis is you break down a complex task into छोटू steps.
Yeah.
Right? Which means as simple as toothbrushing है. Okay, अब मेरे को toothbrushing को अगर break down करना है, what are the steps? I walk to the bathroom. I stand in front of the mirror. Number 2. Third is I pick up the toothbrush. Okay. Next is I pick up the toothpaste. Then we open the toothpaste. We apply toothpaste on the toothbrush. Okay. We open our mouth. We put the toothbrush on the right. We brush it 3 or 5 times, whatever your you have, whether 3 times, or then you turn the brush to the other side. You brush 3 times, right? Then you do the front teeth. Then you turn to the top right, top left, top front 3 times, right? You throw it, you spit out, you gargle, you wash the brush, you keep it back. So the entire toothbrushing, you pick up towel, wipe your face, and you walk out, right? So this entire toothbrushing technique is being divided into so many steps. And in this, what we say is use positive reinforcement, which means we know that there is something applied which is aversive for the child. In every step, what I'll do is I will identify what the child prefers. So for example, मेरे बच्चे को videos देखना पसंद है, right? There is a song like Baby Shark Doo, उसको बहुत गाना पसंद है. So what I'll do is every step I will use continuous reinforcement schedule. Every step what I will do is I will start reinforcing the child. So I say, oh, let's walk to the bathroom. The child goes into the bathroom and say, good job, and I'll play the song. Baby Shark, I'll play it for 10 seconds. Then I'll pause it. Then I'll say, okay, stand in front of the mirror. The child stands up and I will play the song, right? Then what I'm doing is every step of the task analysis, I am reinforcing. I'm developing each and every step with a positive reinforcement. That's task number 1. Some days it will also happen that I will only do, again, you have a forward chain, backward chain, right? We follow. Depending on the child, you will decide with this child, I'll do forward chain, which means only first task. Walking to the bathroom is what I'm going to work for first week. मैं brushing नहीं करी, I'll shape up to it. मेरे को चाहिए बस bathroom तक जाए, गाना ले, हम वापस आ जाओ. Next week हम bathroom में जाएंगे, शीशे के आगे खड़े होंगे और वापस आ जाएंगे, right? I can do again depending upon how quick the child is. Might not be 1 week, might be आज हम bathroom में गए, कल हम bathroom जाके शीशे के आगे खड़े होंगे, तीसरे दिन हम bathroom जाएंगे, शीशे के आगे खड़े होंगे, brush. अगर backward chaining है, all we are doing is we are doing the entire chain till the end and reinforcing every step of it, right? So what you're doing is you're shaping and using positive reinforcement. You're putting the challenging behavior no onto ignorance, and you are just reinforcing each and every step. That answers the question?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. It does.
Just one more thing, sorry, as again a disclaimer, remember when we are doing anything we always fade. So अगर continuous reinforcement schedule है तो continuous से हम variable पे भी जाएंगे. My child is doing this, I'm using a backward chain. ठीक है, 2 हफ्ते हो गए, my child is walking to the bathroom. अब मैं walking to the bathroom reinforce नहीं करूंगी. Walking to the bathroom, standing in front of the mirror and picking up toothbrush, उसके बाद मैं reinforcement दूंगी. So you have to also practice that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Any other question, guys? Yeah, anything you guys want to discuss, share?
Hello, Priyanka ma'am.
Hello.
Yeah, this is Lynette. Hi.
Yes.
I have a question. There is a child who's in junior KG. Actually, he goes in the afternoon. But every day he gets up by 6:30 and he cries. He doesn't want to go to school. Even today also same thing happens. So parents call that both are working and the child stays with his grandparents. But every day, every morning, and end of the day, like he goes to school, he mingles there, he interacts with the children, and end of the day when he comes, he's happy, like a normal. And whenever his parents tells, that tomorrow you have to go and this and that, tomorrow you will get this and everything, then he's okay. But then again, next day morning, he gets up by 6:30, same time he gets up every day and he cries. And then he asks his grandparent to call his parent, like mom and dad, that I don't want to go to school. And once he, once he gets that positive approach from parents that, okay, don't go then, because what to do? Every day it is same and he just cries. And just like cries, nothing else. And so many times what happened, the parents have taken half day and they have come from office and they have taken him to the school. But then every time this is not possible. The
True, I
child is
agree.
like, the behavior is like same. Every day the same thing is happening. So what can be done?
Okay. So if you see the behavior is crying, what is happening before the behavior? Uthana. सोना सुबह उठना किसी को पसंद नहीं होता है. I am just assuming based on the given situation because जब वो स्कूल जाता है तो everything is fine, right? That is
Yeah.
okay. स्कूल के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं. So something is happening during that hour that is causing discomfort to my बच्चा. Right? Is it? It could be maybe he's not sleeping in time. I'm just assuming. I'm just looking at all the variables, right? रात को time से नहीं सोच रहा, उसकी नींद पूरी नहीं हो रही है, because उठना problem है, स्कूल के अंदर he's fine, right? And I don't know जब वो रो रहा है तो parents क्या कर रहे हैं? Parents बोल रहे हैं अच्छा कोई बात नहीं, like you're saying there were certain days the parents were okay with it और वो घर छुट्टी मार के बैठ गए थे. Right? So they're not keeping any consistency to anything. If you're teaching a replacement behavior also, they're not even saying कि बच्चा रोने की बजाय वो हमें बोले मुझे स्कूल नहीं जाना है, and I'll be like okay ठीक है तुम बोल रहे हो मुझे स्कूल नहीं जाना है तो मैं स्कूल नहीं भेजूंगा. Right?
No, it's not like that. He every day he cries. Like in this week, like they are just trying to make him like and he gets up by 6:30. Like he goes by 10 o'clock. Yeah. The child is very normal. He goes to sleep by 10. He gets up. That is his habit. He gets up by 6:30. So that is also normal. And every day like he cries. That is the problem. Means parents are like behind him that I will bring this, you go, like today I will take you to somewhere, like look, after school I will take you to the park something, but you go to school. Or maybe the next is like today's teacher's birthday, so you go, you will get chocolate. The next day is like yesterday I told him that tomorrow there is a magic show in your class, so you go to school. He was ready in the evening, but then again morning I got a call from parent and that he's at home. We are we are in office, and he's just making same again that I don't want to go to school, and he's crying like that. So today the parent is taking half day and he's coming like that, and he's telling that at least I will take, because grandparents are like every day same thing is happening. So they both are like, what to do now? The one with the grandparent also, he also like in the afternoon, he went with him, but every day it is not possible. Okay, and every day the same thing that I don't want to go to school, and he cries. मतलब सब किया हम लोगों ने.
How old is this bacha? What is his
5.5, junior KG.
He's like a chotu bacha, right? So okay. So if you'll see, the parents' behavior is somewhere reinforcing him not coming to school, right? The crying is also not put on extinction, and I understand as parents, see, it is very easy for us to do things because we are not emotionally attached, right? And very honestly, it is difficult when you're emotionally attached with something, right? And as parents, sometimes the strategies, we have to change our strategies because we can't tell a mother or a father कि बच्चे को रोने दो. It's very unfair, right? And another thing that I'm seeing is very often happening over here is bribing. Okay, let me tell you guys very clearly, there is a very fine line between bribing and using your reinforcement contingencies. Reinforcement is a process, right, which naturally happens. It is not something that is like आप पहले बोलते हो कि अगर आप ये करोगे तो आपको मिलेगा, अगर आप ये कर रहे हो तो आपको वो मिलेगा. आप बच्चे को ब्राइब कर रहे हो, राइट? तो आप बच्चे को इनडायरेक्टली क्या सिखा रहे हो कि अच्छा मेरे को अपनी चीजें चाहिए, मेरे को ब्राइबिंग चाहिए, तो मेरे को मम्मी पापा के लिए चीजें डिफिकल्ट बना रहे हैं. Never use bribery. It is a very natural process. आप लोग महीने के एंड में काम करते हो, आपको सैलरी मिलेगी, right? You get salary, right? When you perform better, you might even get bonuses. That comes like a surprise. What does happen? Do you get bonus every time? No, only when you perform better, you get bonus. It's a contingency that is in place, right? It is not that it is like कि अच्छा तुम इस महीने काम करोगे तो तुम्हें सैलरी मिलेगी, नहीं तो तुम्हें हम सैलरी नहीं देंगे, right? Stop. So that is one very wrong misconception that people do. It is a promise that you do something, you get something, right? We might use it at times, but the way we use it also in our verbal communication is very different. We say, okay, how about we finish our work first and then we can talk about what you prefer. We are not saying कि आपको chocolate चाहिए ना, काम करो, right? So these two things are very different. It's a promise that happens. Secondly, what is happening is, if you'll see in this scenario, हर बारी parents का behavior ना consistent नहीं रह रहा है. Also because parents are also worked out कि बच्चा रो रहा है और घर में दादा दादी है, सबको संभालना है. All we can do is, we can request them is to make the morning wake up as happy for the child. Okay, if the child, for example, if it's my child, I have a 3-year-old in my house. Okay, my son is 3, and I also know in the morning it's very difficult to wake them up. So what I do is, I know what he prefers. He loves music. So before waking him up, I know it is that I'll switch on the Alexa, I'll play music, then I'll start waking him up. I'll also give my time कि अगर आज 5 का 10 का 15 मिनट भी हो गया, gets up, we'll have dance, we'll have fun showering. I will not say school जा रहे, I will not talk about what is happening. We'll just follow the natural procedure very happily, and I'll make the entire morning time very happy and fun for the child. Right? And that is what I will do. When I'll do it consistently, obviously पहले दिन तो बच्चे को नहीं पता ना मम्मी क्या कर रही है, right? So that behavior will also take time. उसका crying जाने में रहेगा. But they have to make the morning time a little fun and engaging for him. And I understand both the parents are working. It could be a little difficult for them, right? But if there is anybody in the home environment who can try this, make it a fun, and if the child is crying or doing it, if they can just ignore it and still follow through the procedure कि back पे नया school भेज दिया, he's coming back, he's fine, then I think that will really help the child. As long as वो बच्चा इतना नहीं रो रहा कि वो gag करता है, वो vomit कर देता है. I hope ऐसी कोई situation नहीं होती है.
होती है actually.
ऐसी होती है. That's a very scary thing.
Yeah. I told even grandparent that you just ignore for some time, or make, just like let him sit in your room or maybe in the hall and you sit. But he said, no, he's with me only. The child is not with the grandfather only. And so he's just sitting next to me and he's crying like that.
I would rather say, उनको बोलो, देखो, for example, in it, if I am also working with you, ठीक है, मैं आपके साथ काम कर रही हूँ, and imagine आपको किसी चीज से आप anxious हो रहे हो और आपको अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है, right? और मैं उसमें मैं ध्यान ही दे रही हूँ, मैं अपना बोली जा रही हूँ, मैं आपको कंसिडर ही नहीं कर रही, आप ह्यूमन, और मैं बोलूँ नहीं उठो स्कूल जाने, नहीं उठो स्कूल जाने. What am I doing? I'm adding to your anxiousness, right? What we say आप crying को ignore करो, पर बच्चे को तो गोद में लेके सहला सकते हो ना, बच्चे को ignore नहीं करना है. You can always talk to the child and say, okay, we get it, it's very difficult, I know, okay, let's sing some rhymes and we can do the walking. Do not ever ignore the child, ignore the behavior. Please calm down the child. वो बहुत छोटा बच्चा है, ठीक है, हमारी सारी battles एक दिन में नहीं जीतनी है, right? So the parents should be consoling. ये नहीं कि बच्चे को छोड़, obviously उसका behavior जब उसको attention नहीं मिल रही, that's what I'm saying, कि ऐसे behavior में पहले रोने पे attention दे दो ताकि वो इतना बड़ा ना बन जाए और वो ये situation आ जाए कि vomit कर रहा है बच्चा. तो जब आपको पहले ही पता है कि बच्चे के लिए it is going to be tough, I would rather, I know बच्चा रो रहा है, I'll say आज मम्मा भी आपके साथ स्कूल जाएगी, and I know it's very difficult, I know I'm giving language to the child, I know नहीं अच्छा लगता, बट कल आप गए थे, बड़ा मजा आया था मम्मा आपके पास, या I am with you. You have to console the child. You can't put a child into a traumatic situation ever, right? So I think what little differently they can do it is, he's crying, they can still console him, but they can continue doing what they are doing. राइट, पर बच्चे को सिलाए जरूर, राइट, और उसको गोदी में स्कूल लाए. इट माइट बी अ मैटर ऑफ अ वीक और सो, एंड द चाइल्ड, यू विल सी द चाइल्ड्स बिहेवियर ड्रॉपिंग, बिकॉज ऑलरेडी वो एंग्शियस है. अगर आप थोड़ा सा कंट्रोल करते करते काम कर रहे हो जो आपको करना है, आई डोंट थिंक इट विल मेक a huge difference. You're not reinforcing any wrong behavior, you're reinforcing the right behavior.
Actually, once he listen, know that when parents call, no, okay, then don't go, because what can be done? Because the child is crying a lot, and then he again the behavior changed. He's happy now.
He's
And
fine,
then-
right?
Yeah.
I know.
That
You
he's
have
crying,
to
you know,
understand,
that
our
is
kids are very smart, okay? Aajkal ke kids are very smart. Imagine
Yeah.
discussing
Stop
them.
crying immediately.
Exactly.
And start playing. Yeah. So, like, let's see what can be.
बट समवेयर हम भी ये करते थे बचपन में, सो इट्स वेरी रिलेटेबल, है ना? किसी को स्कूल जाना, आई थिंक एज टीचर्स वी हैव टू डू अ बेटर जॉब कि हमारा बच्चा संडे को भी बोले मुझे स्कूल जाना है.
Yes, actually, the same thing. Like, I feel that I'll actually he's my brother's son. Actually, Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, don't take it personally, but I'm saying as
Yeah.
teachers, we have to make education, learning so much fun. We have to change, and that is what we are expecting from you as teachers. कि you for our kids are going to create an environment जहाँ कि वो बोले संडे को भी मुझे बैग उठा के स्कूल जाना, मुझे घर नहीं रहना, यहाँ बड़ा बोरिंग है, वहाँ बहुत मजा आता है. And that's what we expect from your teachers, to make it very reinforcing, make learning so fun.
Actually,
Yeah.
it is from teacher. I will tell. Like, yeah, that's we need to inform teacher that do something so that at least he will start coming to school on daily basis.
Yeah, and please tell the parents also कि अगर बच्चा रो रहा है, बच्चे को नहीं इग्नोर करना है बिहेवियर को, तो प्लीज उसको उठा के कंसोल करो. बहुत छोटा बच्चा है.
Yeah, that is there. Yes, that is there. So now he's coming
They
up.
can still drop them to school. They can sit in school, ask the parents or school people if they can make a little modification in terms of parents भी स्कूल आके थोड़े दिन बैठ सकते हैं. स्कूल ऑफिस मिस करने से अच्छा एक हफ्ता आधा दिन स्कूल में बैठेगी ना, वो नेक्स्ट वीक से जाने लग जाएगा.
Yes, at least, yeah, at least कुछ दिन, yeah, few days at least let them go with, along the child.
And pandemic के बाद ना a lot of things has changed. So our kids are also, those
Yes.
साल they have been indoors. So
Every day they don't want to go to school like that. Every day, no. Okay.
personally, ask me, I also don't want to go out. And मैं घर पे ठीक हूँ. Isn't that true for us also? So that
Yeah,
is, they are no different from us.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No, pleasure.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I actually finished things pretty much in time. But yes, I hope if you guys have any question, if not, please ask, because we are expecting now as teachers, when you guys go out and you have verbal issues or language development issues with kids, you can say, yes, we can deal with it. We can also teach our kids other forms of communication, so we can actually develop their language. So if you guys have any question, please let me know. Yes, please. Jharna and Manali, anyone can go first.
Yes, ma'am. Right now, like we were talking about the language development. So what
Yes.
verbal happens is whenever I ask the child for, the that is the echoic and the stretching of it, the child gags. And for every sound, he does the same thing. So how do we go about that? I'm trying it like persistently there without fail. But then also when I play the music and everything, that's fine. But the gag is a problem. So what do I do about it?
Okay, so what you see is, Jhanna, okay, tell me. So your behavior that you want the child to respond is आ पे आ बोले, क्योंकि आप elongate कर रहे हो, right?
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay, what are the reinforcers you are using?
Again, the dolphin sound that we have, that is do shark, the shark, baby shark sound.
Is it
Then he
actually
loves
identified as a reinforcer?
Yeah, that's his high value reinforcer.
Okay, so guys, another thing, good Jhanna, you bought this question, okay, which I would like to make you guys aware of is, कुछ चीजें हम लोगों को पसंद होती है पर हम उनके लिए काम नहीं कर सकते. ओके, मुझे चॉकलेट्स बहुत पसंद है ना, पर महीने के एंड पे अगर मुझे सैलरी की जगह चॉकलेट मिलेगी तो सॉरी नहीं चलेगा, मुझे सैलरी चाहिए, मुझे चॉकलेट नहीं चाहिए. सो व्हेन वी से यू आर आइडेंटिफाइंग द reinforcers भी अलग अलग तरीके के होते हैं. highly preferred, moderately preferred and low preferred, right? So जब हम language और speech पे काम कर रहे थे या elongated, I would say जो बच्चे का बहुत ही strong reinforcer है ना, मतलब जिसको देखते ही वो बस they are very happy and they can do anything in the world for that. use that and isolate it. Means वो सिर्फ हम लैंग्वेज के लिए अलग रख देते, बाकी reinforcers बाकी चीजों को सिखाने के लिए करेंगे, बिकॉज मुझे लैंग्वेज डेवलप करनी है, मैं वो करती हूँ. नाउ इफ माय चाइल्ड okay has certain things like he prefers कोई चीज, for example आप कह रहे हो उसको बेबी शार्क डू पसंद है, that song, right? Okay, in that sound shark में भी आता है. Maybe as a motivation, every time the shark sound is coming, I'll only pair the sound and not expect him to echo, right? तो मैं क्या कर रही हूँ, मैं साउंड को reinforcer के साथ कंडीशन कर रही हूँ. मैंने गाना चलाया, आ बोला, गाना पॉज किया, फिर आ बोला, गाना चलाया, फिर गाना चलाया, फिर आ किया, फिर पॉज किया. तो first what you're making is you're conditioning the sound to a reinforcer. That means it is an happy sound, right? This sound. And what you do is when we are doing this is because maybe आ बोलने का बच्चे का response effort बहुत ज्यादा है और उससे genuinely नहीं हो रहा है, right? आप expect कर रहे हो, उसका response effort ज्यादा है, अभी he's not ready for it. So by you pushing, he's ending up in gagging, which is a negative behavior, and you don't want that to be there. I would say go back a step. Response effort कम कर दो. पहले आ pair करो, make it a happy sound. वो आ पे आप भी बोलते हैं, you still be happy, right? Pick up something else that you want to shape up, work on that, give it a break for a week or two, still continue pairing it. जब भी baby shark हो रहा है, करो, you will see automatically the child will show spurt. Maybe the a sound becomes like a communication response कि वो बैठे बैठे आ बोलेगा और आप गाना चला दोगे. So whenever he wants to listen to baby shark, he will start saying ah. So it's not like a direct one-to-one, but an indirect pairing that you are doing with the child, right?
Okay,
So
I'll try that.
if your any vocal response is causing a little bit of discomfort to a child, the first rule is stop immediately, step back, think about it कि maybe मैं बच्चे को थोड़ा ज़्यादा push कर रही हूँ. Give it a break of for a day or two, reevaluate your contingency, see you have a right reinforcer or not. Again, start with conditioning the sound and then shaping the sound again. So that will help you get a better response.
I need to wait and give him time, basically.
Yes.
And basically, parents are like, at times, parents are like on our head.
I know, tell me about it. I feel you. I know.
So that,
I think parent training is another thing.
We have to rush up, but then again, I stop and work it at my pace only, because we have to go to the child's level, and we cannot see the parent expectation at that point of time. So
I totally agree with you, Charna. I totally agree. And I like that you're really keeping the child at the top. Good job.
Thank you.
Yes, Manali, sorry, it's a long wait.
No, ma'am, that's okay. I just, could you give me an example of practicing replacement behavior in a neutral setting? So, I mean, I couldn't get that example that explanation that well. So if you could.
Okay. In a very natural setting, right?
PPT it was saying neutral setting, so I didn't understand.
Okay, wait. A neutral or a natural setting is putting the contingencies that they happen naturally. Okay. Let me show you. Can you see my screen? Wait.
Not yet.
Oops. Let me show you a video and then let me see if you can understand. Okay, I think I can't share. I don't have access.
Priyanka, you may be able to share with the
Nitika.
Your box and arrow wala icon.
Nitika, that is what I'm doing. I'm doing my entire screen, and I can only click cancel, not share.
What about try just a video or a tab?
Got it. Yeah, thanks. Got it. Yeah, now you can see, guys.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Just see this video. Volume must be a little low. So the teacher is asking that, okay, tell me what we need to get to make a papanda, what behavior the teacher is working that instead of child getting up and grabbing stuff from the rack, she wants him to sit in a natural environment. It's a play environment. Sit and request for items from her, and she can develop her communication by sitting and asking, or she can prompt him to ask for items. And that's what she naturally is doing is, tell me what we need for a popcorn. Do we need this? The corns? Do we need the lid first? What do we need? So she's prompting very naturally, and that's what she's saying. Let's continue watching. Okay. So in this environment, she was working on his communication skills. So naturally what she did was she created a play environment, right? And she wanted him to sit and ask for the item. So that's natural contingency that she's putting in a natural environment, and she's prompting him to sit and request for different items. So Navi, that's how we naturally train on developing language. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Welcome. So if we don't have any more questions, let's open our panel to the group discussion then. Yes, I think we have Nitika, Shraddha, and Ipshita.
Yes, Priyanka, I'm here.
Perfect.
Hello, I'm Atmika.
Atmika is also.
But I don't see Ipshita ma'am in the group. That's why I was waiting for the job. So I think we'll start then. Okay. So good morning, guys. So this is a different session. So it's slightly different from the sessions we have already attended. This is like a panel discussion with some of our presenters. So basically, we have some commonly asked questions about ABA, and I'll be asking questions, and we will be discussing about it, and we'll share their thoughts. After some times later in this session, the platform will be open for you guys to ask questions as well. So by saying so, I'll jump into the first question. The first question is for Priyanka Sethi ma'am.
The question is, what is the right age to start ABA?
Sorry, Atmika, was it to me? I'm sorry, I could not
Yes,
hear you.
yes.
Sorry. Yeah. What is the right age to start ABA, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there is no right age to start ABA. As we know, ABA is a science. It just tells you the contingencies, what to use, when to use. In fact, it really says if a child is diagnosed with red flags at an early age and you start using the science, you can actually reverse back the science. So it is a basic science that you use, when to use reinforcement, when not to use punishment, how to shape up the contingencies. So there is no as such defined age to start ABA. In fact, started early, it can really reverse back the red flags which the child is showing, and we can really roll up the milestones in a much more naturalistic.
Thank you, ma'am. So the next question is to Shraddha, ma'am. As an interventionist, how to plan or how much practice is needed for a parent to work in the home environment?
All right. So if I take this question, and I was listening to Priyanka as well, I guess we got this question just right now. See here, there cannot be a number to it, that this is the exact number of a practice that we can say that this much is required or these many hours, because it actually depends on child's level. And one of the parent was discussing that there is a lot of importance is held in parent schedule. How much time and availability is in the parent repertoire to practice it. So when we are saying it, that when the parent is always thinking, am I doing enough? Is it sufficient? Should I do more? What is the thing that here I should stop? As a special educator and as an interventionist, it is our role that we should consider that this is the child level and this is what parents' profile is. As an interventionist and as a special educator, who all of us are sitting here, we should consider both the things, and we should schedule, and we should give parent, this is a possible schedule that you can follow. It might not be required कि हम पूरे दिन का schedule बना के दें. We can start it with 1 hour. If parent is able to do it successfully, 1 घंटा अगर हम बच्चे के साथ उस successful काम को कर लेते हैं, it gives such a joy and feeling of accomplishment. So whosoever is here with us and learning with us today, that what are the ABA strategies and what are the principles, when you are asking that how to answer this question for a parent, what is sufficient, I would suggest that please consider the child level and consider the parent need, understand what they can do, and make a schedule for a parent by collaborating with them. मतलब आप उनके साथ बैठ के आप इस टाइम पे ये करिए और उन्हें एक छोटा सा प्लान दीजिए. जितनी जल्दी वो पेरेंट उसको मीट कर पाएगा, उतना सक्सेसफुल पेरेंट फील करेगा और उस चीज को वो आगे लेके जाएगा. So the answer is this, that how much is sufficient is the answer for this particular question is in the schedule. If a schedule is given by a special educator and an interventionist, it is going to be helpful for a parent. So the parent will not be in a, that corner that where the parent is in guilt, and there is no number that 5 hours are good or 7 hours are good. So a good scheduling. Yeah, Yanatika wants to share her thoughts on that.
Yeah, I wanted to add to your thoughts, Shraddha. I really like that you're talking about parent के around उनके like उनका behavior हम देख रहे हैं.
Yeah.
उनका motivation, उनका momentum हम build कर रहे हैं. And something we're always going to face is कि ये कब होएगा, and we finish कब होएगा.
Right.
And we have to move as a field, try to get the mentality away from कब to क्या है वो goal जो हम meet कर रहे हैं. And like you said, वो schedule बनाओ तो उनको दिखेगा कि कब कि कौन से goals हमने schedule करे हैं, in what order, so they know exactly when they've met one, it's time for the next. it's not time bound, it's goal bound. And I think we see this in behavior therapy, special ed, everywhere in teaching spaces, that it's a matter of when, but we have to make it a matter of what.
Right. So please be out of this pressure, whosoever individual is here, either it is a special educator or a parent, that it's not the time that tells you that, aaj maine padhaya nahi. So just if you make a schedule and make it a small schedule and just be consistent with it.
Yeah, I think we speak in terms of intervention,
Yeah.
but we also speak in terms of people, us, parents, others, as educators. So हम लोग भी अपने goals क्या में चलते हैं? तब is the second question asked to क्या?
Correct.
So, looking at applied behavior analysis as not just intervention and as a, field of learning for everybody, or human learning, or our goals, our parents' goals, our aspirations, their aspirations. And of course, in the intervention field, because we are all psychologists, educators, interventionists, the child's goals or child's field, aspirations as well. Do remember we are all working with a person and
True.
not a thing. It's not a clock that can tick and finish an hour. So
by talking about goals, my next question is to Ikshita ma'am. How can we be mindful about setting a goal, like considering the age, skill level, or how are we going to prioritize it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sorry I jumped in a little late to the conversation, so I'm not sure if some of this has been touched earlier. But I think that's something, okay. I think something that I think all of us in the field need to be a little mindful about is at what age has the child started coming to us for therapy? And as we move on, to kind of shift our focus into not only what is age appropriate for that child, but to stop trying to play catch up in a way. So I think like early intervention is a great time, right? When we have our kids coming in early on, when they've been diagnosed early, that is the time for you to try and get those skills, try and get them to the level of their peers, because as Priyanka ma'am had said, in our in the first day presentation, that's the time when the brain is still developing. There are still associations that are being formed. So that's the time when the focus can be on really building those early skills that are where you're trying to play catch up. Something that I am a little passionate about, and the conversations that I have very often with parents, is when we think of our preteens or adolescents, and when you start working with a child of that age, and then when you walk in and see that you're still working on goals like identifying alphabets or numbers, I think that's somewhere where as a field we need to start having this conversation about thinking of like functional goals. And really this conversation should not just be, it's not a conversation that's just happening from us as therapists or teachers. I think that's a conversation where we need to sit down with everyone who's part of the team of people who are concerned in this child's life. So parents, definitely, we need to sit down with parents and have a conversation, about, what is the most important thing for you to teach your child right now? Do you really care about whether your child knows their alphabets, or do you care about whether your child can independently probably make their own food, eat their meal, use the bathroom, a couple of ADLs, communicate, know how to maybe go out in the community and, buy a packet of Maggie for themselves. So things like that shift from what we have like our early academic or pre-academic goals towards more functional, age-appropriate skill, moving towards goals that are more relevant for independent living. Specifically also social-emotional regulation goals like independent leisure. Do we want a 14-year-old to constantly be told what to do? Or do we want a 14-year-old to also be able to keep themselves engaged, to have some activities of interest where they're able to go engage themselves? They don't need a person constantly breathing down their neck. So I think that's a conversation that needs to be had specifically for, I think, some of our older students, where we need to sit down with parents, we need to sit down with other therapists, teachers, family members, and really think about, we have maybe the next 5 or 10 years of therapy for your child. What is our goal? What is our aim? What is the big picture? And then try and move backwards to a more realistic goal setting. So if your aim is that you want to start working on like some pre-vocational or vocational activities, let's then identify those prerequisite skills that are catered to those pre-vocational and vocational activities. So if we are at a point where reading, writing is probably something, I'm not saying that the child can't do it, but do we want to maybe like reduce the amount of time, instructional time that we spend on that? Or do we want to change the focus? If we are teaching reading, do we still want to go back to teaching alphabets, or do we want to teach them how to identify words that are relevant to them, identify words that are important to safety, identify words such as bathroom? Mall mein kahin gaye, can they identify where the toilet or the bathroom is? Identify words that are going to be implicated in their vocational setting. So maybe shift from literacy or indicating alphabets in a very specific context towards a more functional approach towards goal setting. Yeah, those are just some of my initial thoughts.
So we are saying that when we are selecting a goal, we should consider more functionality of it, right?
Yes, and also I think another part that I have missed out that I want to talk about is the child's own agency. I think we need to start respecting the ability of our kids to make choices. So even when we are choosing vocational with what is available for them to do, let's actually give them a chance to pick out of the options that we're presenting. Let's see what is it that they're interested in. So just because a child is interested in art may not necessarily mean that we have to push the child towards art and do all kinds of exhibitions. Maybe the child is also interested in food. So can we probably work on some sort of like sandwich making skills, or try and see what are the stuff that we can work on to make this child ready for some sort of a job or some sort of a transition to the food and beverage industry. So rather than us coming in and deciding that, oh, this is what our child can do, so this is the only choice for them, how about we broaden the idea and really see what is it that they're interested in, and then see if we can capitalize that and make that into something that they can do.
Yeah, so we are coming up with the functionality and the choice making while selecting the goals.
Yeah, I really like that point that you said कि just because he's good at art doesn't mean उसको अब हर exhibition में जाके खड़े हो जाना है. Some things can just be hobbies. Some things can be jobs. And that's where we make a difference between what the child wants to do for leisure and what the child wants to do for labor and dignity and being part of community or contributing to others. So sometimes we just want to cook because I want to eat the khana. But sometimes I want to cook because I want people to eat and I want that kind of like reaction and thing. So we want to see what is their interest. Is it the social part of it? Then maybe there's a job prospect wahan par. Lekin if it's an internal part of it, then let it be a leisure hobby thing and don't mix around with it so much also. So yeah, I think I really like that idea, and it's a good thought. As kids grow older, we forget that. We want them to just become engaged in something. But sometimes it's okay to be engaged apne saath hi. It's a very functional thing कि घर पे तुम खाना अपने लिए बना रहे हो, बहुत अच्छी बात है.
Yeah, I think on that, Nitika, I'll pull in a sentence which I always want to say is that don't kill your reinforcer.
Yeah.
The word that they use is don't shoot the dog. In your this thing to skill and train and make independence. And it's like, remember that there is a person. Remember that there is joy and learning, and there are two separate or sometimes together things as well, right? I think, Ipshita, to your thoughts, I would also add that and I'm forgetting pivotal, the pivotal skills, right, and the behavioral cusp, right, things or learnings that expose the child to a bigger world, to more reinforcing spaces, to more joyful learning, to more dignified learning. Those are skills perhaps. Somebody had duly asked them also, what are they really? So exploring and thinking when we are teaching a particular skill, are we teaching it? Is it a skill that opens more doors? Or is it just this particular skill? So if you're teaching reading, are we just teaching reading so he passes an exam? Or are we teaching reading because he can learn a recipe from reading a recipe, and then learn a social skill from reading a social skills, learn or whatever? So I think keeping our focus on the pivotal responses and the behavioral cusps when we are taking goals is as important as the interest and the leisure and the, other factors, the parent schedules that we've all thought about as well.
I had one more point to add to that, Dr. Priyanka, which it's something that I encounter very often with kids who I start working with, is even thinking of the relevance of a certain skill, which may have been very important in our time, but which is no longer relevant. So something I come across very often is parents are obsessed with getting their kids to write with like beautiful handwriting. And very often I have a conversation कि आप अपने दिन में कितने बार लिखते हो? या तो आप text करते हो, या तो आप typing करते हो. In today's world, writing as a skill is not valued as much as it was before. You can spend your entire day and go about your day without having written a single word. Yes, it's definitely valuable in a lot of ways, at least learning how to sign your name. But again, when we're trying to think of like the limited number of hours of therapy that you have with a child, would you really want to focus on criticizing their handwriting or making sure that their handwriting is legible? Or could you instead teach them how to type or how to text? Because the idea is that can they really like put their words on paper or like communicate with someone? Like, is there a replacement for that skill which is a little outdated today? And I think sometimes parents need that like shift in perspective when you're talking to them, just to like challenge their idea of what is an important skill to have right now.
See, I think knowing that time and energy are both limited resources and using them carefully is possibly one example that comes my way is also when you said, no, they should go out and buy Maggie and make for themselves. I was like, no, just teach them to order Maggie on big basket and then it will come home. So, much safer, much faster, much easier to teach as a skill. Another very, relevant example that comes in is the Dolch list of words. A lot of people will say, no, then they can read all the I and the but is. I understand I understand from a school perspective and a reading perspective to know those, but is that really functional reading? Is that really understanding the words that are there in your environment? And there are these studies in which they've omitted all the Dolch word lists and they've just written noun, verbs, people or places, and then it just makes as much sense, if you understand the context. So focusing your energy on context rather than each part of the content sometimes makes a world of difference. Yeah, so many examples, and I think all of us feel so strongly about it. We can go on and on. We should ask the audience what they feel about it as well.
Can I just add to that point to one very, like Ipshita said, choice making very important. Another thing that as professionals we always have to keep in mind and have to tell parents is, besides making choice, exposing our kids to different area and not just one time expose and be like they're not liking it, but maybe some elongated or a repetitive exposure to different areas is also important. We also have to change our mindset and shift from that the kids can only make candles and can only do cooking or can only make coffee or can only make soap and sell that, right? Just exposing to other things. And maybe in one go they might not like it, but it's okay to give them time, space, and energy to maybe get idea or a hang of that skill, and maybe then they start enjoying it. And that small shift, along with choice making, goes a long way in really identifying what is the motivation for our kids, what is it that they are really, really liking. So that is just one thing that I wanted to add to the conversation.
Yeah, it's important, Priyanka. Thank you for mentioning it. Anyone from the audience is having any question regarding this, what we are discussing right now regarding goal setting? If not, then we can take another question.
Or any thoughts, not necessarily question.
Yeah.
Share. We'd love to hear from all of you. We're all part of this process together, so I'm sure people have had their own share of challenges or experiences.
Yeah, I think as practitioners, we're trying to use assessments as guides and kind of trying to incorporate ki parents ko kya chahiye, bacche ko kya chahiye. So then, I think it's becoming part of our practice. Yes, I think we have a hand. Jharna?
Yeah. Jharna wants to share her thought.
Yes. My question is, like, when we are doing the assessment, at that time we get to know that the child doesn't know this, because the child has not been given the exposure. And there is skill deficit and all those things. But now my point comes when we are, at the point of making the plan, as in deciding the goals as to what all we'll be taking. So if we take the ABILS or ABA as a whole, so there are so many points that we have to cater all of them, simultaneously, like imitation, instruction, then, echo, then, there are so many things. So when we plan out all these things, and as per the child, I don't take all of them absolutely, but now there is a time when the child is not, I am not able to do that all of them together in that one particular session. So how do you, decide as to what all are the points that we have to take? Again, we have decided everything. Then also there are certain things which we have to, prioritize. So how do I do that?
That's a really nice question. I can speak a little bit to the assessments part. ABLS का बहुत अच्छा example है क्योंकि ABLS goes from A to Z domains, and in each domain there are like 30 to 50 pointers that you could be covering. So when we are making individualized education programs, what we want to look at, and this is why it's individualized. Firstly, कि बच्चे का need कहाँ है. So you've identified maybe say 12 of these A to Z, तहाँ पे need है. But doing 12 में से भी, even taking one goal from each may not be doable in just a 1 hour session, right? So then you may want to prioritize which of these 12 are prerequisites to the other. जैसे कि man training, जब तक man training के initial steps नहीं होते, तब तक probably intraverbal communication वो सब नहीं आएगा. जब तक manding, tacting, तुम्हारा strength, base strengthen नहीं होता. So you have to look at those things also. Which of these are prerequisites to the other domains? Another part that I like to look at is from goal to domain. Am I covering enough domains that the child is getting a holistic development? So I want to cover some goals from the communication domain. I want to cover some goals from visual perception and scanning, matching, sorting kind of domains. I want to have some goals जो leisure and play पे work करते हैं, so that the child is getting some time where they are actually interacting with either themselves or people outside. And then if they are at a space, they may pick up an academic goal. If they are at a space, they may pick up an independent living, ADLs wale goals, activities of daily living goal. So I want to pick up 3 to 5 domains and see how many goals in each do I want to dive into. And the lovely thing that I have learned since I've actually been working in India is that IEPs don't have to be 1-year IEPs. And that has really changed my perspective a lot. कि आप 3-3 महीने के भी IEPs कर सकते हो, which means आप smaller spaces में शुरू करो. And as you learn more about the child, you can pick up from different domains or different goals within the same domain. If you feel कि अच्छा अभी हमारे को deep dive करने की जरूरत है, man training अभी थोड़ी सी foundation building की जरूरत है. I don't want to get too much into communication until mans are strong. Or at the end of 3 months, my God, he's picked up all his mans. It's time to build up. It's time to pick up more and more things in tacting and intraverbals. So I like the idea of doing frequent check-ins with smaller IEPs, and that makes it more manageable. But I think everybody will have their thoughts on this because goal setting.
I have one thought for Jharna, and I really like the way Nitika has said that please look at that, what you are actually targeting, and is the prerequisite is met or not. And then she's touching the domains. Look at the thing which is the core deficit which the child is showing. If there is a core deficit of anything, that becomes the immediate need to put into the target. Still, Jharna, when you were telling, you said हमने सब कर लिया, फिर भी कुछ रह जाता है तो उसको 2 हफ्ते बाद ऐड कर लो. कुछ रह जाता है तो उसको 3 हफ्ते बाद ऐड कर लो. But be consistent. Watch 5 targets that you have selected. Just focus on them consistently and teach them, so that after 3 weeks, when you pick something else, you don't have to work on it again, and that goes into the maintenance. And this will always happen, that you cannot take 20 targets together and run in 1 hour. To maintain the quality, you have to cooperate it, that okay, I'm going to work on 7 things, and you can pick next 7 again.
Great. I have such a lovely panel over here. Thank you so much.
I
Ipshita
wanted
wanted to add something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I wanted to add one more thing to that. I got logged off, so I do. Again, I apologize if someone has covered it. But I think going back to what Dr. Priyanka had also said, right? कि आप जब prioritize कर रहे हो, to identify those skills which we call pivotal skills or which is which form a behavior cusp. तो आप जब identify कर रहे हो कि अच्छा ठीक है आपने assessment कर लिया है and there are like 20 things you can work on. If you start sorting them to be like which of these skills are going to open up our child to a whole host of like possibilities in reinforcement and learning and teach those first, and then also think of skills when we think of prerequisite कि हमने ये सिखा दिया, इसके बाद जब हम दूसरा skill सिखाएंगे ये इसमें embedded है तो ये भी practice हो रहा है. So even thinking of like those prerequisite skills which बाद में you don't have to necessarily keep working on them separately. आप जब कोई higher order skill सिखाओगे उसमें वो integrate हो जाएगा और हम जिसको कहते हैं मेंटेनेंस, तो वो अपने आप ही प्रैक्टिस हो रहा है. So if you start kind of prioritizing your skills that way, another very important thing is to also think what are the skills that are absolutely preventing this child from learning. So even coming down to your most basic skills, अगर बच्चे में अभी बहुत सारे behavioral issues हैं, if there are skills that are preventing the child from sitting down and attending, then immediately the priority has to be कि पहले 3 महीने हम बस इसी चीज पे work करेंगे. Because there's no chance, there's no point trying to teach something else if our kiddo is not yet ready to sit in one place, look at you, engage with the environment, understand cause and effect. So those are some ways where you can prioritize saying, do I waste my time trying to teach a skill if my child is not ready to sit and learn yet? So picking targets according to that.
Yeah, this is what I was saying. Then just look at the prerequisite, look at the domains, and look at what is the core deficit that you need to touch. This is what Ipshita has given an example of.
The VB-MAP assessment I really like for that reason. It's one of the only or one of the few assessments जो development age के basis पे है. And as Ipshita had mentioned, as your child grows older and older, वो age-based goals नहीं रहते, then it becomes more function-based, socially valid goals. So VB-MAP assessment में they have a nice space जहाँ पे they kind of show you that you start with verbal behavior, then you move on to more leisure, social, and then at the very end it's academic. And this is for 0 to 4-year-old. Of course, as you grow older, academic will take a different kind of a priority. But that's just something to think about. These are your learning to learn skills. If I can communicate what I want, then I can ask for break, I can ask for help, and then it'll be easier for me to learn later on. And similarly, उसमें एक barriers assessment है that Ipshita was talking about. What are the barriers to learning? तो वो भी अगर हम एक बार assess कर लें कि हम seat पे बैठ पाते हैं कि नहीं? Are we attending to the material or not? Are we able to understand first, then ka contingency? So these are small things that can help us become more prepared learners.
Just to add to what everybody in the panel was talking was, I like all the ideas, but as a teacher, Jhanna, when also you're looking at the goal, now look at the bigger picture, look at the child, look at the bigger picture where you want to take the child, and use technology wherever you can use it. Use we have a lot of help, like I think Ipshita also gave a very good example of if writing is something which is like we do not use. As if you ask me also, I'm so well equipped now with typing and doing stuff. Only time we write is when we have to sign a check or we have to sign. So those skills. So look at the bigger picture also when you are designing or picking up goals to design an IP, and always vary and discuss with the parents, like, is it like really, really important to do this? Definitely the pivotal behaviors are very, very important because they form the basis और वो actually foundation बनाते हैं बड़े skills के लिए. But जो चीजें आप really IP से let go भी कर सकते हो, it is okay. I know Abel's VB-MAP give you patterns, but they also give you things that sometimes आप एक higher level skill सिखा सकते हो जिसमें lower level prerequisites are not there. So always also look at the bigger picture and बच्चे को भी देखो कि उसके लिए इस वक्त क्या जरूरी है इस एज के हिसाब से. Don't be too much. Those assessments are to help us, to guide us, right? But they don't dictate कि वो आपको वही patterns follow करने हैं बच्चे के साथ, and you can't move them up and down. Otherwise, you will never be able to look at the entire picture for the बच्चा. Just to add to what everybody said.
I hope
There's one more.
this question. Okay, continue.
See, there's one more question related to this only. What is the again, I know there's no limitation of age and numbers that doesn't count here. But then also, how do we convince a parent that this is a child who is actually not able to write, and we have to give him the assistive device? I mean, the acceptance of that thing doesn't go to school as well. I mean, they don't accept it. And that doesn't apply, to the parents as well, because they say, no, हमने भी try कहाँ किया, we'll just give it a try, OT चल रहा है, सब कुछ चल रहा है. I mean, counseling भी चल रही है, psychologists भी घर पे आ रहे हैं, they are counseling him to write. But if the child is not able to do so, then how do we go about this?
Priyanka, you want to take it?
Sure. I think I feel you, Jana, because I think we all are smiling because I know where you're coming from, and we all face this problem. कि बहुत बार होता है parents को मनाना बहुत मुश्किल होता है. Okay, one small tip I will share with you, which works with me, is no matter आप कितना understanding develop कर लो, कितना कर लो, कई बार नहीं होता. Walk the talk. Make them participate with you in the writing skill, and you know what, वो try करते हैं. It will be a win-win situation. Either parents हमें help करके बच्चे को writing सिखा देंगे, नहीं तो वो give up करके खुद ही समझ के they will. That is why we say always involve the parents in whatever IP you are doing, and always see our goal as a teachers are not just to communicate, to educate our kids, are also to educate the parents, to show them the bigger picture, show them the reality of the world, right? I get it. और होता है हम बहुत सारा old school, like हम लोगों ने भी writing सीखी, और parents के लिए कई बार important होता है, and it's not a battle you have to win with the parent, right? It is just all about understanding the child and listening to them, क्योंकि आप अच्छे से कई बार parents को सुनोगे ना, तो आप वो concerns के बीच में से ही solution निकालोगे. The major thing that we don't do is we don't listen. हम parents हम ये सोच रहे थे कि वो हमें focus कर रहा है, writing कराओ, but कई बार वो बस ये बोलना चाह रहे होते कि मैम क्या ये अपना नाम लिख लेगा, मैम अगर हमें कभी कहीं जाना होगा तो हमें वो चाहिए. तो और हम ये सोच रहे थे कि पेरेंट्स हमें बोल रहे राइटिंग करा रहे हैं, जबकि वो सिर्फ इतना मांग रहे थे, मैम इसको अपना नाम लिखना सिखा दो. एंड आई थिंक दैट इज अ वेरी डूएबल थिंग, राइट? सो द फर्स्ट थिंग आई वुड से इज sit down with an open view, listen to the parental concern. कई बार कंसर्न इतना बड़ा भी नहीं होगा, बहुत छोटी चीज मांग रहे होंगे, हम सोच रहे होंगे they are focusing on that. In case that is not a scenario, try and talking out, telling them the rational की जैसे अभी हम लोग बात कर रहे थे कि हम लोग भी टाइपिंग करते हैं, हम इतना राइटिंग नहीं करते, जितनी नीड है उतना नीड बेस्ड अच्छा है. और अगर नहीं भी हो रहा, राइट, you have the techniques, you have to give it a try. Get the parents involved with doing it with you, right? They will also see maybe what they're saying, maybe the parents kei baar, and this has happened with me a lot of times. Sometimes I am not able to teach a skill as a teacher, but a parent, when I tell them the techniques, they do it better than me, right? And there is no harm in it ki wo better kar deta, because ultimately our goal is bacche ko sikhana na. Who does it doesn't matter, we have to collectively collaboratively do it. So maybe the teacher nahi hoga to wo khud samajh jayenge jo aap itne time se unko batane की कोशिश कर रहे थे. Delegation आसान होता है, execute करना मुश्किल होता है. So maybe that is what you can try, Jharna, and those are the solutions. Mithika, Ipshita, Shraddha, please add in if you guys have any other solutions to this.
There's one more
I
thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
Jharna, there's one more thing that when she said the thing that walk the talk, yes, this is the point that you can ask them to join us. The success journey, when they see the child is doing it successfully with you, and how, as I said, that how accomplishing it is for them. This also gives them the reinforcement, okay, fine, let me try. And yes, there are these obstacles we face that school में allowed नहीं है, school में लेकर नहीं जाना है, लेकिन हम स्कूल तक तो तब पहुंचेंगे जब हम उस पेरेंट को कन्विंस कर पाएंगे कि आप घर पे इस चीज को कर लो. तो अगर वो सक्सेस आपके साथ उनको दिख जाती है, अगर आप उनको टीच करा रहे हैं बच्चे को और आप दिखा सकते हो, अच्छा देखो ये दिख नहीं पा रहे, लेकिन जस्ट सी दैट ऑन दिस डिवाइस द चाइल्ड इज एबल टू डू इट. सो दैट is one step closer for the parent, for you to convince the parent. Yeah, Ipshita.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add, I think both Shraddha and Priyanka pretty much covered the crux of what we would want to do. Ki chalo, let's try and find a way to connect with the parent to try and explain ki या तो ये goal क्यों significant नहीं है, or whether it's time to change the goal. But I think sometimes जब आप उस point पे पहुंच गए हो ना, when the parent is just like, no, we want to continue working on that goal. I think for parent buy-in, it just comes into a matter of prioritizing. To be like, ठीक है, मेरे पास 1 घंटे का session है. For this parent, it's just important that I continue to try. Can I take out 10 minutes of my session to work on this goal, even if I personally do not think this is a very socially significant goal, but the parent really wants it? Koi nahi na, it's 10 minutes of the session and you have that conversation with the parent to say that, okay, here are like these 10 goals that we've decided, or here are the 5 goals. Here is why I think that these 8 goals are more important. Are you okay if I spend a majority of the session working on these goals? I will continue to target this goal, but the amount of time that I spent on it will be less on this. So it's kind of a win-win, like you're meeting them halfway kind of a situation, to be like, okay, I'm not saying कि हम इस पे बिल्कुल नहीं काम करेंगे, we'll keep trying it, but I don't want to take away from this maximum instructional time that I have with the child. Sometimes you just need to do that to get parent buy-in. You don't want a parent to feel that their voice is not heard. You don't want a parent to feel that what they want from the child is not what you're going to work on. At the end of the day, they are as much a part of the child's life, and they get to also decide and have a say in what are the goals that we want to work on. So sometimes it's just a matter of a compromise.
Very true. And Jharna, if you take the point, if you collect all the points, you'll see we all have mentioned the positive points, that how to get closer to this. Because if all of us are here, we are having some get together of 73 people. If your parent is not aligned with you, if your therapist is not aligned with you, हमारा intervention, planning, goal setting सब रखा रह जाएगा, because वो जो जिस पर्सन को आप दे रहे हो करने के लिए वही उसमें बिलीव नहीं कर रहा है. सो इट इज इम्पोर्टेंट कि आप कंसिडर करो कि अच्छा ठीक है, बात करके करवा लो, अपना पॉजिटिव रिंग सक्सेस दिखा दो, या फिर कर ही लो उनके लिए. 3 of these are the, I think these are very good pointers, and all of them are in a positive side of this conversation.
Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Any other questions related to this? Anyone? Okay, then I'll move to another question. So we have talked about goal setting, and we had an elaborate discussion about it. I am going to ask a general basic question about ABA. Is it only for autistic kids, or is it only for ASD based kids? To Priyanka said, ma'am.
I think we all can pitch in into this.
Yes,
I think it's a very, I think yes, honestly, it is also, it is associated a lot with autism, because in comparison to the other, I would say sciences or the therapies or the techniques that are being used with the kids on the spectrum, applied behavior analysis have shown much great results when you apply it with the kids, and much faster and huge results. And I think because of that, the association has become so strong that everybody thinks ABA, autism. So, but that is not true. ABA as a science is applied vastly to a lot of areas, to regular, I think, school also. I apply ABA in my house. I apply ABA on me, my family, and everybody. So it is basically
we all
like
do that.
We all do that, right? Our teachers used to apply it without knowing it. कि वो 10 on 10 पे स्टार दे रहे और वो सब दे रहे, स्कूल में अप्लाई होता है, राइट? सो व्हेन यू लर्न द साइंस, यू लाइक दिस इज द एवरीडे साइंस जो हम लोग करते हैं, राइट? ऑल इट मेक्स यू अवेयर ऑफ इज क्या ज्यादा करना है और क्या अवॉइड करना है करने को. वी हैव टू डू मोर ऑफ reinforcement, how we have to listen to others, how we have to use people's motivation to drive them to do other things also, how do we use contingencies. I think AB is all about that, right? And I think बहुत ज्यादा people now are talking about dolphin training, dog training. हाँ AB होता है, हाँ होता है, वो सब में होता है. Literally हमारे parents हमारे साथ करते थे ABA, right? तुम लोगों को अगर बाहर जाना है या नाइट आउट्स पे जाना है तो अच्छे मार्क्स लेके आओ, 10th में स्कोर अच्छा करो, we'll let you go on the trips. That is science, okay? What were they using? They were using something we prefaced to get what they wanted. Very simple. So I don't think so that it is true that ABA is only associated with autism. It has shown great results in the field, and that is why it is so vastly and well known with the science in comparison to anything else. But yes, ABA I think is of science. It works for a lot of things that we do. Like it's like a day-to-day science. That's how I like to refer to it as.
I would add
Yes.
to that while I think that definitely you can apply ABA with every person, everything, every activity that you're doing. I have seen that the way I apply ABA with a typically developing child or an elderly person, because I've done ABA with my nanny when she had to do her physical therapy, and उनको हमेशा चाय पीनी होती थी, तो I was like ठीक है 5 राउंड लेंगे उसके बाद हम दोनों मिलके चाय पियेंगे, तो वो भी किया है. And I used to give a visual schedule because she would forget as well. It was like a time of operations and such. So, but I realized that depending on the audience you're working with, you'll have to utilize that strategy differently. हम blatantly ये token system and pictures and all use कर सकते हैं with our kiddos. As our kids grow older, even within ABA, we try to make it more natural, right? We're no longer giving these stars. We're giving points. We are giving, just like a praise. We want to move away from these picture-based to more social-based praises and such. So I think that is something I would keep in mind. Ki while ABA is utilized with everybody, I think there are again socially appropriate ways of using it so that it's not used as a blanket thing with everyone. Individualize करके हमें हमेशा use करना है, चाहे कोई भी हमारा audience हो, we individualize it to them.
I agree with you.
I agree with you. It is very individualized. That reminds me that it is so beautifully done that I use it with my son. I use point systems with my son, and it is so beautifully embedded in that he has started using it in return on us. He's a 3-year-old kiddo, and he starts using it. How do you get to shop without any points? Imagine the development that they have. So they start giving you points back to a level that they start exchanging points for doing things that you would never allow for, right? So it's really nice. So when you study ABA, it is not just limited to good bolna, very good bolna, like Nandika said. It is very individualized. There are very layers to it. It's very huge. It's vast. It's not just limited to what we do with our kiddos. And yes, I totally agree with her. It is very individualized, just like it is very individualized for adults.
So as this question is asked, we have heard so many examples in last 3 days, and if you just go back to those examples, कोई अपने health maintenance का example दे रहा है, कोई school setting के examples आ रहे हैं, कहीं से घर के examples आ रहे हैं. So and यहाँ पे the audience is not always that बच्चा which is who's autistic, right? So health sector doesn't mean neurological concerns only, but if you want to do your self management, if you want to change your lifestyle, you can use ABA principles. Very well said by Nitika that it needs to be more natural and individualized. जैसे जैसे आप बड़े इंसान को कहोगे आपको एक टोकन मिलेगा तो कहेगा व्हाट आर यू डूइंग टू मी, उन्हें टोकन नहीं चाहिए, उनकी चाय का कप उनके लिए बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है.
I think, yeah, just to kind of like what has sometimes helped me when I had started into this field is जो हम लोग पिछले 3 दिन से बात कर रहे हैं कि a lot of things that we are talking about is nothing new. What is behavior analysis or what is behavioral sciences? We are describing processes that actually happen in the environment. हम कुछ नया बना नहीं रहे हैं. We are describing how does learning happen naturally in the environment. Learning happens when something is reinforcement. Behavior analysis as a field is coming. We are introducing terminology. We are introducing a specific way of understanding these procedures. But it is something that happens. So to say that ABA can only be used in something and cannot be used, it's just like, हाँ पर ये हो रहा है. Like learning is always reinforced or punished. These are just principles of behavior that exist. When you think of ABA, you think of, yes, there's a specific toolkit कि हमारे पास ये strategies है जिसको हम अलग-अलग ways में combine करके use कर सकते हैं to either increase behavior or decrease behavior. That's a very specific way that we're looking at it. Going back to what Nitika was also talking about is, yes, like ABA has probably like risen to fame because it's been proven to be an evidence-based strategy that we use specifically as a therapeutic approach towards working with a specific population. But if we take a step back, start looking at what we do on an everyday basis, we find out that we're anyway implementing principles of ABA. And then you start thinking about how, like, when we're doing it, it's not rigid, it's naturalistic. So our reinforcement is our salary. Our reinforcement is going to bed at the end of the day feeling really like you've had a productive day, or checking out on your calendar कि मैंने 3 दिन इस हफ्ते workout किया. All of those are applications of the same principles that we've been talking about. So you can pretty much use it in anything that you want.
So the answer is ABA can be used with many things and at different places.
So I think the way we work, the way we work with our therapists, the way we work with ourselves, the way we work with chronic behavioral medicine diseases, the way we work with being compassionate, fair, working with acceptance. I think ABA that way has become a very, very deep science over a period of time. And the layers are just huge in business, in education, in managing your own internal thinking processes. I think ACT, or acceptance and commitment therapy, is now becoming so well used. It's coming up really nice. So look at the depth that the science provides to work across, and of course, Nitika aptly said, customized to who is doing it, how they are doing it, and always having the person's buy-in. So if I don't believe I want to work on myself, then I should not work on myself. So first I have to buy in and believe as well. So think of it in a broader, deeper sense as a science to be used for the betterment of environment and the human animal kingdom per se. Environmental science right now is bursting with use of behavioral technology to make changes in the climatic worsening and all that. So yeah, ABA is not just used for autism, but I think the 8 of us that are here are very, very working with the children with neurodiversity population kind of field. So whatever you use ABA in, you should mentor in it, you should study it, and you should do it deeply, not just randomly. And think about the population you're working. Yes, ma'am, you can ask.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share that so many of the principles that we've heard about in the last 3 days, I think many of us, like all of you mentioned, have been using them, in our day-to-day lives. And I've been a special educator for many, many years now, but an educator really, because now I think with the NEP also coming into play, we all need to be more inclusive, and education is education for all. So it's a way to use these principles to really teach all children. And I think my son taught me that when he was very young. He's now 22, so a complete adult, but I still use ABA principles with him. I remember when he was very young, and anything unplanned, he just would not comply. He just did not want to do it. I could not surprise him with a plan that, chalo, this is planned, but today in the evening we are going to so-and-so's place. No, I will not go. You didn't tell me about it earlier. I'm not going. So even today, I was talking to him yesterday, and he's now outside India studying, and he's coming home in December. And I said, by the way, when you come back, and we live in Bangalore, we need to go to Delhi for a week because there's a wedding. I had to tell him now, because otherwise he'd land in December, and I would tell him when his flight landed, he would say, sorry, mom, I'm not going. So, I have learned because of him that I need to plan. So it's a life lesson. And it helped me. It helped me because when I planned, then I'm planning, it's helping me in my everyday life when I plan. So it's just, one of the things that we learned in this antecedent-based intervention was that, let children know in advance, what is going to happen through the day, etc. So it applies to life in general, So that just wanted to share that with all of you.
Yeah, that's a really lovely example. And thinking about planning, I think it's so nice to see like planning also can be taught through ABA principles, and flexibility can also be taught through ABA principles.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a really nice example to give like holistically that you know which support system works for you, and then you use ABA to implement that in your life.
Yeah.
Can I also just add how much I loved that you kind of identified the educator and special educator bit? Because I think that's a conversation that we all need to have. Maybe not today, but just wanted to highlight. I love that shift that I think I'm also consciously trying to make in my own practice, saying that this is what we're educators, whether we're working with kids with different needs, whether it's differentiated instruction, but at the end of the day, we're all just educators.
Yeah. So you know that the NEP talks about, and now everywhere in the world, we're talking more about UDL, right? Universal Design Learning. And the question that keeps coming to my mind is when we're working with children in therapy centers and in special education schools, how are we planning to mainstream these children, and what UDLs and accommodations and modifications can we use, which will enable the child to go into a regular inclusive school? So I think all these principles, if we can apply them universally to all children, everyone benefits from it. You know, all the principles that we've done that I've heard about in the last 3 days, and ABA is something I've always been very curious about. I've heard it and I know it's applied, but I never knew the details. So thank you. It's really been enlightening. But I've also realized that these are principles we can use with everyone. So if we use it with the entire class and not just with 2-3 children who are having difficulties, then the entire class is going to benefit from it, right?
And that's something that I feel like we need to introduce within our school system. It's something that's already done in the US. They call it positive behavior supports, multi-tier systems of support. So all of these management techniques of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, it would be awesome if we could start integrating that within our schools, because it's great for all students, to be having some sort of like visual idea of, reinforcement or what they're working towards.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, Jarna, you can ask the question. Oh, okay. And then I move on to the next question. So next question is to Ikshita ma'am. It's about how can we use ABA principles in a play time and to have a meaningful learning time in a natural environment.
Sorry, could you say that one more time, Atmika?
How can we use ABA principles in a play time?
Oh, yes. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I think this also relates to some of the misconceptions about ABA, which I'm hoping we have clarified over the past 3 days. But हम लोग जब ABA के बारे में सोचते हैं, हम हमेशा बहुत ही ऐसा structured tabletop बैठ के हम trial present करके reinforce कर रहे हैं. And even when you see like video representations of it, I think somewhere the idea that ABA is only supposed to be done in highly controlled settings, जहाँ हम बच्चे के साथ बैठ के matching करवाते हैं या उनको communication करवाते हैं, which isn't true. जैसे हम लोगों ने देखा है, ABA is basically a set of principles, and it can, I think Priyanka ma'am had spoken a little bit about this on day 1, but it can be used so much to make play meaningful, especially when you're starting with like our younger age kiddos, where all of the learning should actually be through play. For a 2-year-old or 3-year-old child, the expectation कि आप table पे बैठ के मेरे साथ matching करोगे या sorting करोगे is a little unrealistic. Like 2 or 3-year-olds should be taught through play. And I think हम लोग बहुत ही undervalue करते हैं the importance of making play fun, meaningful, but also enriching for the child, also using play to teach. And that brings us to like basically using ABA principles in a naturalistic setting. तो आप जब बच्चे के साथ pretend play कर रहे हो या use what we call like child ed session, you're playing with the 2-year-old, see what the child wants to play with. If the child wants to play with say puzzles, how can you use the puzzles to teach certain skills? So you're playing with the puzzle, अच्छा खेल रहे आप बच्चों के साथ help कर रहे हो, एक piece हटा के, that's an opportunity for you to teach the child to ask for help or ask for the puzzle piece. You're teaching them that. Or you can use play to teach them how to transition from one game to another. So अच्छा चलो ठीक है, हम एक game खेल रहे हैं, then you're like अच्छा मुझे अभी ये खेलना है. You're teaching the child to deal with transitions. The minute they transition, you give them a lot of positive reinforcement saying, "ये आप मेरे साथ दूसरा game खेल रहे हो, ये कितना fun है." So I think trying to use play meaningfully, keeping in mind the same principles of using reinforcement, arranging your environment, looking at MOs, what is it that the child wants to do, and using that to teach the skills. So walking into a session knowing that मुझे ये 3-4 चीजें सिखाने हैं, पर ये 3-4 चीजें कैसे सिखाने हैं will completely be dependent on what is the activity that the child wants to do. So if I want to teach communication, if I want to teach play, if I want to teach joint attention, I have to use what the child is interested in. So yeah, I'm sure everyone else over here has a lot to add to that, but I think it's something that I wanted to talk about is that when you're thinking of ABA, it should also eventually, yes, for some kids, it's better to have a highly controlled tabletop setting, but the goal should always be to move towards naturalistic instruction, to teach things in a naturalistic way. And a lot of times, that's actually better to start off naturalistically. मेरा जो यूजुअल एक्सपीरियंस रहा है कि हम लोग जब बच्चे को बहुत ही कंट्रोल्ड सेटिंग में सिखाते हैं, उसके बाद बहुत सारे स्टेप्स होते हैं इन ऑर्डर टू स्टार्ट टीचिंग द चाइल्ड टू जनरलाइज दैट. हम जितना एनवायरनमेंट को कंट्रोल करते हैं उतना ही एफर्ट हमें करना पड़ेगा टू टीच दैट स्किल इन to teach the child to generalize that skill. If it's possible for us to start with a natural environment and teach the skill in the actual environment, we are like easily trying to like do away with multiple levels of like generalization that you would have to teach. So if you want to teach a child, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of a good skill. If you want to teach a child how to, can someone pop in with an example? I'm drawing a blank. What would be
sorting
sorting
of toys?
Yeah, great. Sorting of toys. So if you want to do sorting of toys, rather than starting tabletop with अपने हम लोगों ने baskets डाले हैं और फिर हम उनको sorting करवा रहे हैं, let's go to their playroom or let's take them to the playroom and the classroom and be like हम यहाँ पे sorting करेंगे. Same thing with ADLs. Rather than teaching kids in simulated environments, if it's possible, again, this is not something that's always possible. हमारे therapy centers में resources का constraint हो सकता है. पर अगर आप बच्चे को natural environment में सिखा सकते हो, let's just jump directly over there and teach them rather than creating this. अच्छा, पहले हम pictures sort करेंगे, फिर हम ये वाले toys sort करेंगे, toys that probably they don't care about. Why don't we just go directly to the environment, use things that they care about, that are reinforcing for them, and teach them sorting in that particular environment?
Yeah, and I think this is a really good example of that socially valid goals that we were talking about. Actually picking up stimuli जो बच्चा रोज engage करता है और उसी के around learning create करना, there's nothing like it. And the fact that I think play inherently has a social aspect to it. So for our kids, it exposes them to a space जहाँ, yes, I want to play my way. मेरे को अपना doll house वाला खेलना है या अपने cars को बार-बार Hot Wheels में slide करना है. But अगर नीतिका मेरे साथ खेल रही है, तो I have to do some things her way also. Because somewhere she's pairing with me and I want her to stay and play with me. So pairing भी हो रहा है, socializing भी हो रहा है, attention is coming from toys to another person also. And then we are learning to negotiate, कि sometimes my way, sometimes your way. So when we have play dates with other kids, and this is harder for kids to do. I think with adults and kids, it's easier to negotiate. But with kids and kids, it becomes a fight. But if we learn that skill of negotiating and just sharing space, it's a really natural way to start the socializing the concept with kids.
Yeah. I want to add one more point. Here. Very well driven that, we should start with the child-centric interest and do it therapist way as well. Many times parent and educators come to us says that वो खेलता ही नहीं है या उसका खेलना ही नहीं है. उसको अगर हम एड्रेस कर लेते हैं एक बार और उसको एड्रेस करने के लिए there is one word that is if you observe the child. And Nitika has just mentioned it. It is their way. भले ही वो repetitive way में हो रहा है, लेकिन वो खेल ही है कि वो गाड़ी बार बार जाती है और फिर नीचे गिर जाती है, फिर वापस जाती है, फिर वो नीचे गिर जाती है. वही खेल है. अगर हम उसके अंदर अपने आप को किसी तरीके से इंटरस्पर्स कर पाए और वहीं पे अगर हम कार का कलर या कार का व्हील या फिर कार गोज व्रुम व्रुम कर लें, तो हमने वहां पे पढ़ाई भी कर ली, हमने 3 चीजें पढ़ ली और बच्चे के गेम को भी डिस्टर्ब नहीं करा, एंड वी एक्चुअली प्लेड. So please focus that the child is doing something, it is of interest, that is the play for the child. Keep your observational skills on most of the time.
That's a lovely segue into one more point that I wanted to add इसी में कि I think हम लोगों को भी as therapists we need to change our idea of what play is. Very often when I talk to parents also, we think of play as reinforcement. We think of play as something जो बच्चे को करना है. Or a child can play with their toys once they have done a task. We don't think of play as being a learning context. क्योंकि हमको भी सिखाया जाता है कि अच्छा बच्चा खेल रहा है उसमें डिमांड मत प्रेजेंट करो, उसको बस खेलने दो, ये उसका टाइम है. But to shift that notion and even think of play as being such an important part of learning and such an important way for us to enter our child's world. So like Shraddha very beautifully said कि बहुत बच्चों के साथ हम ये कहते हैं कि especially with a lot of kids on the spectrum, they don't possess the, you know, we see issues with, we see trouble with imagination, we see trouble with pretend play, with perspective taking. So we say that they don't know how to play. Let's reframe that. It's not that they don't know how to play, it's that we haven't been able to teach them maybe some functional ways of playing. They all have ways of playing. It could be stimming with the paper. How do we get into that world? You go in and start stimming with the paper. Who are we to decide that stimming with the paper is not play? That's also play. We go in, we start stimming with paper, we start doing parallel play, we build that rapport with the child till the child starts being like, oh, मैं भी stim कर रहा हूँ, Ipshita bhi stim kar rahi hai. Oh, she's also enjoying this. Then you're slowly developing some sort of joint attention when you're entering their world to be like, oh, you're doing the same thing. Then maybe you're introducing, oh, हम लोग ऐसे stim कर रहे थे, अब ऐसे करते हैं. What are you doing? Suppose the child starts mirroring that, you're teaching imitation. You're slowly introducing skills that can then be used in a different context. These are the pivotal skills that we talk about. But you can use, your entire session can be play-based. Like I think for me, the most successful instruction is where a parent can't come in and say, when a parent can't come in and figure out कि आप उनके बच्चे को पढ़ा रहे हो, which can go both ways. I've had conversation with parents where they're like, आपने तो पूरा session बस मेरे बच्चे के साथ खेला है. And then I've had to explain saying that yes, हम लोग खेल रहे थे, but while we were playing, look at all the things that we worked on. We worked on sorting, we worked with imitation, we worked on reciprocal communication. मैंने question पूछा, उसने जवाब दिया, हमने imitation किया, हमने man training किया. So I think that's also an important conversation for us to have with parents to say that play is not bad for your child. Play is a huge way for us to connect and teach things in a fun manner. Like therapy does not have to be boring. It doesn't have to be tabletop. Our kids don't have to hate us for coming in and making them do, like tabletop work all the time.
Correct.
And I think I just want to add it starts with the child's motivation, but it's a really nice place to expand interests. And I'll talk a little bit about this in the last presentation, but Ipshita gave the example of tearing paper. अब समझ आ गया कि बच्चे को पेपर टेयर करना अच्छा लगता है. Can we then do some kind of a collage making with that torn paper and put different colors in different spaces? Can we tear the paper, soak it up and make new paper, how people make like reused, recycled paper? So what is it that they're enjoying and how can we expand their skills from there? So play is a space to understand child's interest, but it's a very nice space to increase or expand their interest also. अगर आपको ये समझ आ जाए, like Shraddha said, observe what about that play are they really liking. अगर स्लाइडिंग करना अच्छा लग रहा है तो जरूरी नहीं कि हम सिर्फ कार्स के साथ करें. We can do the other things also. अगर स्लाइडिंग अच्छा लग रहा है तो शायद हमें रोटी वाला बेलन भी अच्छा लगेगा. So let's see what is it that they like and let's expand interests. And that's a really I think important, pertinent thing for our restricted kids, like who really want to do specific things in a specific way. It's a nice place to start. Play is a really good place to start and start expanding interests.
Yeah. Anyone has any question on it, or shall we move to another question? Any thoughts? All right.
So my next question is to Nitika ma'am. Like, how important is it to work with other professionals in the same field?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think ये जो with the parent example that we had come with for writing, firstly to answer that, it is extremely important. We are not the only people in the child's life.
Nitika, can you repeat the question, because I think I couldn't understand the question actually.
Okay. So Atmika was asking, how important is it for us as professionals, special educators, behavior therapists to work with other professionals in the field and collaborate? So I think this is a space jahan pe, and you will see that most of our kids are in some kind of a wraparound team. They have a behavior therapist, they have an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, a sports PE teacher who comes in, koi yoga instructor, music teacher, and then of course the parents who are with the kids for the most part of their day and life. So
Yes.
it's extremely important that we are at least in conversation with other professionals. ये जरूरी नहीं है, and I think that gives us perspective as to what all the child is engaging in, and it gives us perspective of how to set our goals, जिससे कि अगर वो music classes ले रहा है, तो maybe I can also include some amount of music in my class, or if that class is something जो बहुत strenuous है बच्चे के लिए, then let me not add more music into my class and make it more strenuous. So it really gives me an understanding, but ये मुझे समझ नहीं आएगा until I can talk to the music teacher. Similarly with OT, it'll be great to know कि वो कौन से specific sensory integrations कर रहे हैं. Is there anything I can do in my session to help? Or should I lay off of it completely and just do something in the behavioral space? So as long as we have communication, these spaces are formed जहाँ पर हम एक तो बात कर सकते हैं कि अच्छा आज मेरे सेशन में ये हुआ. If your session is following mine, maybe you want to be a little aware कि आज अच्छे से सोया नहीं है, आज हमने ज़्यादा aggress किया है, तो we have exerted ourselves quite a bit. So maybe the speech or OT session has to be more relaxing, a little bit more fun and play based. It gives the child a space jahan they are not always being worked at from different angles. They are being worked at as a wraparound team. Everybody's working to better them together. तो ऐसा नहीं लगेगा बच्चे को, and I have like one vocal kid who really likes to say, you know, मुझे हमेशा काम ही कराते रहते हैं. स्कूल में भी काम है, फिर ट्यूशन में भी काम है, फिर प्ले में भी काम है. So when your child is saying that, then they're feeling as though everybody has their own agenda and they're just pushing their own agenda. So if we can each communicate and be like, हम double work तो नहीं करा रहे, same काम twice तो नहीं करा रहे. Can we make it complementary to each other? So I think that is a very important thing. And one more point I'd like to say about this is that it makes us a little humble as a professional. And it takes a little stress off of us कि हमें दुनिया भर की सारी चीजें नहीं target करने की जरूरत है. There are other people who are probably more qualified to do the work, and we can then focus on the goals that we have set. As well as then we understand and a learning space gets created. कि मुझे सब कुछ नहीं पता है. I as a professional don't know also दुनिया भर की सारी चीजें. So it's a great space. If I can talk to an OT, and I have loved having conversations with OT and be like, okay, this is what's happening internal, because I've been focusing so much on the external. You know, when I talk to speech and I'm like, okay, I've been talking about communication, but you're really getting into clarity through all your exercises. So it's been enlightening. It's a good, fun process of learning. But I think more importantly, it really supports the child when we collaborate with other professionals. And हमेशा time नहीं होता है, but I think it's something that if we can make the time for, it can really benefit professionals as well as the child ka growth.
Correct. I really like that when you said it make us more humble and it take off the burden from us. And I feel that same must be happening with the parent. You know, that they are not feeling that, okay, fine, I have to do everything, because we are all the supporters to the parent and the child. As she said that, yes, we discussed that, okay, what happened in my session, and I can convey it to the therapist or who's taking next session. At times it is not possible. Child is moving to different setting. Please make sure that you get that communication even they are in the different setting. Set up a call, meet once in month, do the Zoom meetings, but it is important to know that and it is not only limited to OTs and special, OTs and speech therapies. At times, we have to know what medicine the child is taking just for our knowledge to see that what behavioral effect we are seeing in our sessions. If we know that, so we can work better. So, for example, the child is taking some medicine and the child is sleepy. So we cannot say, okay, let's do a lot of exercise and work on it. It is in the child. अगर वो पता होगा तो वो हमारे लिए अच्छा रहेगा एंड या so we are just taking off the burden when we are trying our level best to help the parent and the child. Any suggestions, any thoughts on this?
One thing that comes out, I'm sorry, I had to step out and step in again. We are still talking about collaboration, right? I don't want to be off topic.
Yes, yes.
One thought that comes in this whole picture is that we are all experts in our own field. We bring to the table experiences that we work with. मतलब जिन बच्चों के साथ हमने काम किया, जिन बच्चों ने हमें सिखाया, हमने बच्चों को नहीं सिखाया, तो वहां पे हम ये सोचते हैं कि अगर हमें अपने फील्ड के बारे में बहुत अच्छे से आता है और हम एक ऐसे प्रोफेशनल हैं जो पिछले से 10 साल के बहुत सारे बच्चों की लर्निंग के साथ बने हैं, जो भी हमारा नॉलेज बेस बना है, वो कभी भी अकेले किसी के काम नहीं आ सकता. ठीक है. सो नितिका कैन नेवर हैव माय एक्सपीरियंसेस. I can never have Nitika's experiences. But all the experiences together and all the different expertise together, मतलब अगर हम at the end of the day एक brain और एक body पे काम कर रहे हैं, right? It's one thing that we are working on, but you could work on it from different thought processes. A psychologist, a CBT, a ACT, a special education, traditional strategies, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, a developmental pediatrician that is on board, and of course the parents' own knowledge of how the child's body is. उससे ज्यादा किसी को knowledge नहीं होती है. मतलब बच्चा अगर ऐसे देखता है तो पेरेंट को पता होता है कि क्या करने वाला है नेक्स्ट. हमें नहीं पता होता वो क्या करने वाला है. बच्चे के छोटे छोटे नुआंसेस में उनको ये पता चल जाता है कि अब इसके आगे और नहीं, अब भूख लगी है, अब नींद आई है. Unless we keep collaboration at the center. अगर आप सर्व करना चाहते हो एक बच्चे को, it is never a single person's job, right? I always say it takes a village to raise a child. And if the child is neurodivergent, it takes many villages to raise a child. तो हर वो बात जो प्रियंका ने कही आप ध्यान से सुनते हो अपने कोलैबोरेटर प्रोफेशनल की या पेरेंट की, या इवन बच्चा अगर वर्बल वोकल है तो उसकी, वो हर सेंटेंस हर शब्द आपको एक बेटर सर्विस देने में हेल्प करेगा. और ये दोनों तरफ जाएगा, मतलब बाहर से हमें और हमसे बाहर, दोनों तरह से. अगर मैं कहूँ जानती हूँ साइकोलॉजी में क्या होता है तो मैं गलत सोचती हूँ, या स्पीच थेरेपी में क्या होता है. और अगर कोई स्पीच थेरेपिस्ट कहता है कि एबीए काम नहीं करेगा तो ये उसको नहीं पता, क्योंकि हम उस फील्ड के एक्सपर्ट नहीं है. पर अगर दो लोग बात करेंगे एक दूसरे से तो कुछ लड़ाई होगी और कुछ समझौता होगा और फाइनली जो रिजल्ट आएगा वो एक बेटर रिजल्ट आएगा. सो ऑल ऑफ अस फील वेरी वेरी स्ट्रांगली अबाउट इट कि वी आर ऑल एक्सपर्ट्स इन आवर फील्ड. वी आर ओनली डूइंग दिस टू गिव बेटर सर्विस. Without listening and talking with each other, I don't think better service is possible.
That is possible, true. Do we have time for another question? I doubt.
I think we've had a long discussion, 1.5 hours, and everybody will be very patient. Atmika will take a call on will we take another question or not.
Actually, this question I have it like my personal question. Working with children and young adults, it's going to be demanding for both physically and for mental really like we get tired of working with it. What is the thought on that?
Yes, very, very nice question. Oh, okay.
It's funny that Atmika asks is Nitika because she's the youngest of us all.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that. I was like,
Telling, right?
It's a good question to
I think
ask.
that is where it comes up, right? Like when you are
Yes.
just in the field, you feel it, the
Yes.
burnout, what we call.
Yes. I think
yeah, आप बोलो.
आप बोले Nitika. Good.
मैं तो बोल रहा हूँ, I think ये बहुत apt question है to end with. So either it's going to burn us out or it's going to rejuvenate us to talk about it, because I think sometimes
That's
talking
why
about burnout makes you
asked,
feel better. But yes, I think working with people, small people, big people, I think working with people can be a lot, physically as well as mentally. So we have to be very mindful of it. We have to do check-ins with ourselves. When I was in school, they would talk about it. Ki there's this thing, ICRA chapter tha, burnout, and then you should go to the playground and go to the swings and go get a drink outside. And I was like, what is the big deal about this? And then when I started with my practice and I was managing practice in school, and it started coming up, and actually I didn't know it initially. I didn't know it was burnout because I'd never experienced it. What ended up happening was I was sleeping, or I was getting sleepy during the day. My body was somewhere giving me signals. I was needing to eat more sweet to stay activated.
Keep that over there. No?
External signals, yeah. Then mentally, I was feeling like I was not absorbing anything class में. तो वो मुझे समझ नहीं आया. I was like, maybe it is just that time of the class जब exams होने वाले, तो I'm not absorbing. I'm trying to understand what about the environment has changed. But in a way, a setting event of burnout had started. Like I think we had gone over setting events. Slowly I could feel that the work and everything that I was doing in the space was chipping at me. And you can see it in behavioral manifestations. You're getting a little tired, or you're snapping at somebody, or you just are not able to make time for yourself, which is a big one. Yeah, I have not actually just sat with myself for an hour and just reflected on the week or the day. So I do think it's a very real thing. I think it's something we have to keep in check by drawing boundaries around our practice. So I think there's a space जहाँ पर एक तो बहुत ही evident होता है, एक time का boundary आप draw कर सकते हो कि मुझे इस time से इस time पे काम करना है. But over the years, I've also noticed ki what work am I doing in those 8 hours of practice, even if I've drawn boundaries. But on one hand, I'm working with little kids on behavioral concerns. On the other hand, I'm working with older kids and vocational spaces or emotional regulation. So I'm stretching myself mentally also. So actually kind of defining your boundaries, both physically in terms of how much I want to work, and mentally in terms of how many topics I want to pick up, or how many types of profiles I want to pick up. Because sometimes it's, and this is a personal preference, so of course everybody will have something to say about this, but I think taking a few topics or one topic and deep diving into it can sometimes give a lot more than doing many topics very upar se. So yes, I think burnout is real. I think it has to be discussed often with colleagues, with people who are maybe not in the field. And biggest thing is actively take time away from work where you're just not thinking about work. If you can do that once a day, that's a very good antecedent intervention to release that stress. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there, because I think we're at 1 o'clock and I think I'd like to hear from other people about burnout.
Yeah, ma'am, I strongly agree with you, Nitika, ma'am. Like, yeah, we all are in the field and we all know, like, we are seeing small kids and adolescents, and sometimes we'll be seeing the adult cases. And like, it will be like row coming up, and like, yeah, the work timing will be specific, and sometimes we'll be able to see, like, even we'll be taking the work to home, and that also will be disturbing our home life, personal life. And sometimes it's like freshers who are into the field, they don't know what is exactly the burnout is, and they will be keep on working. And sometimes it will be related to the money part, the salary they will be looking into, and sometimes it is like fully dedicated to the profession. And on the later the day, or like after few months, or sometimes it will be able to like after few years, the professionals who are into this field will get to know, like, I am in a burnout state. It's like self-realization is like very difficult. Like self-realization is sometimes it happens, and if it happens, it's really, really worth. So whenever whoever is required a break, it's like, if you feel like you are tired, or like if you are need some help, or like it's better to take a break from the profession, and like at least for a 2 days, or like 1 day, go out, chill out, and come back to the sitting. So it will be like a mind refreshing and full refreshed, and we'll start again with the work. So our clients, or like any of the children or the parents or whomsoever, we will be also in a different state of mind, and the way how we speak to them also will change, and it will be totally relief for us also as a professionals. So I was love listening to everyone. Like anybody else, Atmika, you were telling something?
Nothing specific, ma'am. As I like Priyanka ma'am told, I'm very new to the field. From before entering the field, I feel like, oh yeah, I'm gonna work with kids, and I was so excited about it, and still I am. The time I put in to the preparation of a session, like IEPs, assessments, and so. And since I'm new to the field and very creative about it and curious about it, and what next, I should practice like to take a break, stop thinking about the kids for some time. That's something I should work on myself. That's it. I just want to say this.
Yeah. I think for all of us, that is the hardest part. I truly believe that anyone who is in this profession is very, very passionate about what we do. And it's hard for us to set boundaries, to walk away from the families and the children that we work with and say, I'm not going to think about them. And I think one of the ways to prevent burnout is to really practice that, to know that while you're in your session or whatever time you have set planning for that session, you're giving your 100% to making sure that you're doing your best. But then also respecting ourselves enough to know that when you walked away, you don't need to constantly be worrying about how is our kid doing, what's the family going through, because while there's a lot of compassion and empathy, that also drains us. If we have to spend our entire day trying to think of all of the lives that we are trying to impact, it can, I think that's what contributes to burnout. You do it really well for a couple of years, and then you realize you don't have any time for yourself. So I think that's one thing that I'm learning to practice, is to be able to walk away and be like, I did the best that I could. I'm going to think about this when I've assigned time to think about this, particular person or this particular thing that I'm working on. And the rest of the time is my time. And just also another thing, I was just discussing burnout with someone else yesterday, and they pointed out that we often think of the solution to burnout being to take an absolute break. To be like, oh, you're burnt out, you need to take time off, you need to go for a vacation, and then come back and resume everything full force. And this person helped me realize that that's not necessarily how it goes. It's kind of what Nitika was talking about. A way of combating burnout would just be like prioritizing. What are things on your plate that you could potentially remove? What are some things that are not making you that excited? How can you don't have to completely stop working. You don't have to take a 2-week long vacation. Can you intersperse with shorter breaks? Can you set boundaries to say that this is all I can do right now? So I want to do this. When I feel that I have the mental capacity to take on more, then I'll take on more.
True. The antecedent management, okay, now I'm reaching there. Let me just get up and let me just do it. And one more thing, when we are saying scheduling, if we do it methodically and just finish what we have decided in that time period, it is going to be a win-win. If we are going to say that we'll do it later, it is not going anywhere, dear. It is on your table only. You have to finish it. So just finish it so that in your personal time, it is not haunting you.
So we are going to have a quick short break for 1 hour, and it was a pleasure hearing from you all. The examples which you gave were very relevant in the work settings, and you wonderfully explained about the strategies and activities getting into the action, and we are greatly enriched and remain well informed from everything what we learned from you all and through the discussions. And I'm sure like it will be very beneficial in our work settings. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And dears, we will be back by 2:10 sharp. Okay, so 1 hour break.